after tunnels being used by Palestinian terrorists. President Biden is urging patience as the Colonial Pipeline resumes normal operations.
The president says motorists in the southeastern U.S. need to avoid panic buying because the gas supply is being replenished.
We expect the situation to begin to improve by the weekend and into early next week, and gasoline supply is coming back online, and panic buying will only slow the process.
He also warns gas stations not to gouge prices.
White House correspondent Greg Clugston, there are multiple media reports that the pipeline company paid a multi-million-dollar ransom to the hackers. Bloomberg, which had the story first, reports it was a $5 million payment. Earlier reports had suggested the company did not fork over any money. Texas Governor Greg Abbott expected to sign a pro-life heartbeat bill that has received final legislative approval, the measure outlawing abortion after approximately 6 weeks. On Wall Street this morning, stock futures pointing to a higher open. Right now, Dow futures are up 156 points. S&P futures ahead 25. NASDAQ futures 135 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
As a follower of Christ, you are created and called for greatness, now more than ever before. In his powerful sequel to the bestseller Kingdom Man, Tony Evans' Kingdom Men Rising calls men to break free of apathetic faith, to take a stand, do more than just exist. You have been called to rise up and influence those around you. Discover how when you get Kingdom Men Rising and learn the art of intentional impact.
New from Tony Evans, sponsored by the Urban Alternative.
With a Democratic sweep officially in place, we are now at the mercy of tax and spend economics. Get ready for runaway national debt pushing the further devaluation of the dollar. So if you haven't invested in gold, now is the time to protect your savings. Birch Gold Group is the premier precious metals IRA company in America. With an A+ BBB rating and thousands of satisfied customers, Birch Gold can help you move an eligible IRA or 401k into an IRA backed by gold. Go to birchgold.com/radio for your free information kit. That's birchgold.com/radio.
Hackers target Ireland's healthcare system.
Ireland's health service says it's shut down its computer network to protect it, while experts assess the attack. Its chief executive says it's targeted data stored on central servers where patients' records are held, and that no ransom demand has been received. Life-saving equipment is not affected, and people needing urgent attention can still go to hospitals. But it's not clear how long the disruption will last. Ransomware attacks are a growing problem. A French subsidiary of Toshiba said today that earlier this month it had been targeted by the same group blamed for recently crippling the US's largest network of fuel pipelines.
The BBC's Danny Aberhart. Afghan police say an explosion inside a mosque in northern Kabul has killed 4 worshippers and wounded more than 20 others. Police say it was a bomb blast, no claim of responsibility. Townhall.com. A potential disaster averted as a major bridge spanning Old Man River near Memphis is shut down.
Repairs to the Interstate 40 bridge linking Arkansas and Tennessee could take months after a crack was found in the span. Thousands of trucks and cars are being forced to detour, and shipping on the Mississippi River is shut down in the Memphis area. Both states' transportation agencies are working to make sure the 48-year-old bridge is safe. Representative Steve Cohen wants to make sure the I-40 bridge repair is included in President Biden's infrastructure bill. The bridge usually carries about 50,000 vehicles a day. John Scott reporting.
In Providence, Rhode Island, Police Chief Hugh Clemens says 9 people have been wounded in a shooting. 3 of the 9 seriously or critically wounded. There have been no arrests at this time. So again, on Wall Street this hour, stock futures higher. Dow futures are up 135 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
It is a Freedom Friday on the Big Talker 106.7 FM as we come to you from Mobile, Alabama. On the Gulf Coast this morning, back to you in southeastern North Carolina across the Cape Fear region at Big Talker 106.7 FM. Of course, you can pick up our live program through various platforms these days on our website at bigtalkerfm.com. Video portion of the show available today and each and every weekday morning from 7 until 10 through our YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And our newly updated mobile app is also available for those Android and iPhone users. Just search Big Talker 106.7 FM. So following our broadcast yesterday, we had about a 90-minute session there to grab some breakfast, and then it was back on the bus as we hightailed it down to the Gulf Coast, about a 5.5-hour ride from Macon, Georgia to Mobile, Alabama, and that's where we'll be stationed for the next couple of days before we turn our sights back on the East Coast on Sunday afternoon. As we move through our Freedom Friday broadcast here today, as always, we will deliver you our weekly Salute to Service segment just after 7:30, highlighting stories of service from the men and women of our armed forces. And we will get to that in about 25 minutes from right now. And given that we're going to continue with the tradition of delivering you a little backdrop as to where we are in the country, as we have through the last few months as we continue our travels with the Coastal Carolina University baseball team. Again, here in Mobile, Alabama, we'll get you a little backdrop as to how this city along the coast came to be over centuries, really, since the French settlers first began their European colony that was originally upstream from Mobile, but a devastating hurricane centuries ago really depleted the area for years before others then came to this area and utilized the river inlet that moves up the spine of the state of Alabama, and then, of course, out to this port city, which is the reason why Mobile has became what it is today, due to the economic impact that the state port here in Mobile has on the rest of the state of Alabama. We'll get you a little history lesson in about 10 minutes surrounding our broadcast location here this morning. Big tip of the cap to our guy TK Turbo, our producer, back home at home base atop the Murkinson building this morning. And TK, I know that you and our friend Yael Ossowski, who will be joining us just after 9:30 this morning, both of you have been working behind the scenes over the last number of weeks to iron out any issues that we have surrounding our digital platforms, meaning the various ways in which you can tune into the program, in addition to, of course, our terrestrial 106.7 FM signal across the Cape Fear region. I highlighted the fact that we've got the mobile apps updated as well here today for the Apple iPhone and the Google Android. But with that said, give folks a little update as I received an email here today from the technical side as far as an additional way in which you can tune in here today through the TuneIn app. Talk about some of the things that went on behind the scenes from a technical standpoint to make sure that we're up and running on an additional platform here today as well. TK. Hello, Bueller. TK Turbo. All right, well, I guess TK fell asleep back home at the base atop the Murkinson building. So we will move on. Maybe TK. Let's go to a break, TK. Are you there?
Yes, sir. What's happening?
Oh, have you listened to the last 5 minutes and me trying to get in contact with you?
No, sir. I had issues here at the station.
Oh, well, that would have been nice to let me know because I set the tee up for you so you could knock it out of the park and you completely dropped the ball.
Yes, I did. I had to deal with building maintenance here.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I wanted the folks to get a little sneak peek behind the scenes. I was telling them how we've worked diligently to update our digital platforms over the last number of weeks with the newly updated mobile app, of course, the audio stream that you get through our website. And now you can also find us on the TuneIn app, meaning for your Alexa device and the other ways in which you may listen at home or at work. Talk about some of the things that you had to go through behind the scenes to get that up and running from a technical standpoint here today.
Well, I had to dig through some history, find out who used to run the station and what emails we used to get a hold of the it's a volunteer type of organization, so there's no real subscription or whatever. So had to work with them over the last week to get our data from the new stream using the new software to get to them. And now we have everything up and running. Everything is connected. Everything from iTunes to Alexa to, what's the other one? Google's equivalent.
No idea.
Yeah, they're all working. I don't use half this stuff. I just make sure it works. But yeah, it's been a bit of a battle between that and keeping the studio itself up and running. Between the air conditioning, the power, and the access, we're making headway.
Well, that's good to know because we are a small, independently owned and operated company. We don't have the suits behind the scenes with the big dollars that are able to invest in a lot of things that many people just take is a given. When you turn on the radio, you expect, of course, the content and the programming to be on air. Well, there are a number of different things, of course, behind the scenes to make sure that is up and running in a crisp and smooth way. And just a couple of weeks back, I know all of you remember the days in which we were knocked down because our transmitter site lost a few components, and that was repaired as quickly as possible. So just know that there are people behind the scenes who are working to make sure that we are up and running each and every day. So we are able to deliver the most entertaining and informative news talk program here across southeastern North Carolina. Looking through our Facebook feed here this morning, looks like it's an absolutely beautiful day back home on the coast. Of course, we are 1 hour behind in the central time zone, so 14 minutes after 6 a.m. here local time, 14 minutes after 7 a.m. back home on the East Coast. So how about this? On the same week, and I tuned in briefly to the top of the hour news segment from townhall.com, and, well, we finally heard from Grandpa Joe. Do not panic buy, he says. 4 days into a situation where, well, many people have already gotten to the gas station to get their petro and their cars fueled up, along with, all the other stories that you're hearing about the craziness and the wildness of this past week in regards to the shutdown of the Colonial Pipeline. Who would have thunk it that 4 days after the fact this all played out? Well, really, it was a week ago that this cyber attack occurred on the Colonial Pipeline. It was shut down, and then really we started to get a sense of the situation on Monday of this week, and we all have lived through the past 4 or 5 days. And only until yesterday, we finally had our esteemed commander-in-chief out in front of the bully pulpit to tell us that everything is okay and to stay calm. 4 days after all hell broke loose across much of the Carolinas and up and down the East Coast due to the fact that we had an issue, of course, a transport issue in getting gasoline to the various petro stations throughout much of the eastern seaboard. And a number of things have come from that. We don't toot our horn very often, other than me highlighting the fact that this is the most listened to, entertaining, and informative talk program anywhere across southeastern North Carolina. In fact, I think we stand out across the board through the various programs that people tune into across the country. We bring you guests and insight you hear nowhere else. And we did that yesterday with our good buddy, John McCumber. I call him Johnny Boy, Johnny number 5, Big John Stud, former cybersecurity expert, and we spoke with him yesterday, and he laid out 20 years worth of knowledge that pretty much explained everything you need to know surrounding what we would consider actual infrastructure in our country. We've got, of course, the traditional infrastructure in a physical sense when we talk about roads, bridges, tunnels, etc. And then this new way of life that we have been living for the last, 25 years, this life in the world of technology, advanced technology, and the need to invest in infrastructure to make sure that we are able to carry out everyday doings, given that we've become so reliant on this new infrastructure in regards to technology. John broke it down about as good as you're going to get, and I encourage you to go back to my website at joecats.com and tune in to that conversation we had yesterday. He laid it out as far as 25 years ago, what the government was doing to identify all the different sectors within technology that we were going to have to, look at, diagnose, and invest when we talk about dollars into making sure that we have a sound footing in this new way of life, as reliant as we've become so quickly on modern technology. He told us what the government and the private sector has and has not been doing to make sure our most vital assets are protected. The gas pipeline, for instance, our electrical grid. It's amazing that you never hear these types of people on the national news media, which is why, of course, again, maybe I'm a homer and speaking a little too highly of ourselves here today, but in my estimation, you're better off listening to us and learning a thing or two each morning for just a few hours, or hell, just a few segments based on what we may be talking about. You tune in each morning, or you catch us later on in the day with a podcast version of the show, again, available just after 10 o'clock each day on my website at joecats.com, joecats.com. You tune in to a couple of segments, couple of hours of our morning program with guests that you hear nowhere else, and hell, you're done for the day. Go enjoy your life without all the doom and gloom from the mainstream news media or the hot takes that, a colleague of yours that you had lunch with one time at the high school, cafeteria, their opinions on social media, someone you haven't seen in 25, 35 years. Who cares? Love your loved ones. Enjoy your life. We've got all the information you need to know right here, packed up in a 3-hour broadcast each and every morning on the Big Talker 106.7 FM and across all the platforms that we have just mentioned over the last 20 minutes. Yesterday was proof of that, as we highlighted a massive story impacting millions of people up and down the East Coast, and we bring in someone with expertise in an industry that, frankly, a lot of us, don't know about as far as the world of technology goes and the issues that the private sector is facing, along with the public sector, as it relates to cybersecurity in this 21st century. Great to know John McCumber, and he's going to be a reliable resource in the days, weeks, and months to come as far as an issue that is going nowhere. When we talk about $2 trillion getting discussed by the Harris-Biden administration right now as far as investing in infrastructure in our country, well, this topic likely breezed over by this current administration, well, maybe no longer. We'll see what plays out over the next several weeks as this topic becomes more and more relevant in our everyday life, the importance of protecting some of our most vital assets as it relates to natural resources, our infrastructure when it comes to energy, and how in which we are so reliant on many of these different sources, yet we have basically ignored protecting a lot of these vital assets for the last 25 years as technology has advanced. In fact, John has another article out this morning at ordinary-times.com that talks about, much of what we were discussing yesterday, how right now dozens of big businesses are going into the archives and looking at different audits and research that has been put together over the last several years as far as investing in their own infrastructure, conversations that they can have with our government to make sure we're doing everything and anything we can to not have to deal with a situation like we did over the past week. Conditions are going to slowly improve as we move through the weekend, and hopefully we've come to a situation right now where people have what they need and are laying low until the supplies are beefed up once again across gas stations up and down the Atlantic seaboard. We're 21 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. As part of our Freedom Friday Salute to Service segment here in about 15 minutes, we'll tell you the story of a U.S. Air Force parachuteman who earned a Medal of Heroism after he treated 7 of his fellow service members who were hit by a blast while in Afghanistan in 2019. We will bring you his story just after 7:30 this morning as part of our weekly Salute to Service segment right here on the Big Talker FM. Your phone calls at 910-299-7535. We'll pick up the conversation after this.
Do you or someone you love suffer from back pain, poor circulation, or struggle to get a good night's sleep? Do you just need help getting into or out of your chair? US Med Express is Wilmington's leading supplier of Golden Technology lift and sleep chairs, carrying a variety of models in our showroom at 1733 Dawson Street. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. US Med Express.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint Faith and Personal Development. Join us for Wake Up Our Faith, a real conversation about living out your faith between Sundays, streaming live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Catch the replay every Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. Stop by and visit us on the web at uprint.life.
Here, Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Mic check, mic check. It's Yael Ossowski here, Deputy Director of the Consumer Choice Center. You'll hear me every Friday at 9:30 on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci Show, giving you the latest in consumer news, analysis, and political topics to make sure you get your consumer fix. Then hear me and my radio partner in crime, David Clement, on the Consumer Choice Radio Show, Saturdays at 10. Only here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
All right, we're back here on the Big Talker FM, 25 minutes past the hour. We're in the central time zone here this morning, coming to you from the Gulf Coast of Mobile, Alabama. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535. And caller, you're with us on this Freedom Friday. I hope everything is going well on your end today. Good morning.
It is. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes, sir. Fish, Freddie the Fish.
Yeah, how are you? I'm sitting here at the sunny basin at Carolina Beach having breakfast at the Gulfstream restaurant. Nice day here on the coast, and I'm sure you're having a great day there in Mobile. When I leave here, I'm going to go over to the state park and look out over the Cape Fear River and watch the river traffic come up to our great port. So that's what I'm doing this morning. But what I wanted to talk about was your talker yesterday about infrastructure and security, etc. There's also something you might be interested in looking into. Are these virtue funds that are trying to take over corporations? One particularly is, I think it's called the Elliott Fund. He's trying to break up companies like Duke Power, and because they're thinking that, of course, fossil fuels are immoral, et cetera, and they're trying to destroy the environment. So, I wonder if you could, maybe some listeners could chime in on that, or you could have someone look into these types of funds and have them interviewed on your program. I'll sign off now. Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll take a look into it, and we know, of course, that there is an attack, or at least an effort by many within our country who feel that yes, if we stray away from the common forms of energy that we've come to know and love in our country in a relatively cheap and efficient, affordable way, that we'll lose planet Earth, basically, is the argument that they're making if we don't stray away from some of these forms of energy and ways of life, that the destruction of planet Earth is imminent, and it's because of we the people here in the United States of America. Doesn't matter what the billions of other people are doing around the planet as far as the impact they have on our environment, or the ways in which they consume energy, and the methods in which they extract energy, whether it be from the ground or anywhere else. It's amazing how this conversation continues to just move forward and gain steam despite all the information that is out there. But this has become a bit of a religion for many out there, this climate change religion, where if you and me only pull up the range just a bit in the ways in which we consume and produce energy in our country, will planet Earth and the rest of the world be better off? All the information shows us, the complete opposite, in fact. A massive greening across the Earth. Yes, the Earth may be warming a very minuscule amount year after year, decade after decade, but in fact, what do we know about warming periods in the history of mankind? That during warming periods, mankind actually flourishes like no other time in the history of planet Earth and the history of human life on this planet. The ice ages over the course of mankind has been devastating to crops, to the ways of life, that we have become so spoiled as to how we go about our business on a day-to-day analysis in the way we live. It's pretty amazing. Even the fact that we've got folks like John Kerry still out there, a career elite politician, flying in his private jets all over the world to tell us that climate change is upon us, and that we need to immediately reverse course. And he admitted just the other day that in fact we need to purchase in our investments towards renewable energies, we need to purchase solar panels from China, as he admitted that many of the solar panels produced in China manufactured by slave labor and the Uyghur population that is of course being put into modern-day slavery on the other side of the world so they can manufacture, produce, and then sell us solar panels. And when you look into the ways in which these solar panels are manufactured on the other side of the world, in the Far East, not only using slave labor, but the methods in which they have to extract the rare minerals to produce these solar panels, actually more harmful to planet Earth than anything that we do here in the U.S. as far as tapping into energy resources like oil, gas, and coal. We have made more advancements in technology over the last couple of decades to limit our impact on the environment than at any other time in modern history, yet no one wants to talk about it. We're moving into the bottom of the hour here on the Big Talker FM, and when we get back, our weekly Freedom Friday segment, we will tell you about a U.S. Air Force veteran who was recently commended with a heroism award for his acts in saving the lives of 7 soldiers while serving in Afghanistan in 2019. Our weekly Salute to Service segment comes your way next here on the Big Talker FM.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. Drivers are finding gas pumps shrouded in plastic bags at tapped-out service stations across more than a dozen U.S. states. Shortages and panic buying continued yesterday, even as the operator of the nation's largest gasoline pipeline reported making substantial progress in resolving the computer hack-induced shutdown responsible for the empty tanks. GasBuddy.com's tracking service reported that nearly 70% of North Carolina's gas stations still were without fuel, and 73% of stations were out in Washington, D.C. Closer to home, 2 people are injured and 2 more detained following a shooting in Whiteville. Police say it happened at the Sandy Ridge Apartments just after 6:30 last night. Whiteville Police Chief Douglas Ipock says the 2 victims shot were both adults. He says they were both okay at the time of the shooting, but there's no further word on their condition. Ipock says 2 suspects were detained, but no arrests have been made at this time. The investigation is ongoing. In Pender County, a man is in jail charged with a triple homicide that happened last November. The Pender County Sheriff's Office arrested 28-year-old Michael Gage Miller Jr. yesterday. During his court appearance, Miller cried while standing in front of the judge. He claims he's innocent. Miller is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the death of William Colley III and Destiny Green, and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. Miller was arrested in Jacksonville and is being held under no bond. And looking for work, the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office will be holding a career expo tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Brunswick County Government Complex. Anyone who may be considering a career in law enforcement is encouraged to attend. Deputies and staff will be on hand to answer questions about serving with the Sheriff's Office. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Haywood with your WWAY Storm Track 3 AccuWeather forecast. Mostly clear skies and a little bit on the chilly side tonight as lows drop into the upper 40s. Friday brings mostly sunny skies and pleasant weather with highs reaching into the low 70s. And our very nice weather conditions continue into the upcoming weekend. Highs will reach in the mid-70s both Saturday and Sunday with mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies. Get the full forecast on WWAY and WYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
I got the call to leave today. My team and I are gone away. Where to, how long? Well, that's a need to know. You can bet on us, 'cause we're good to go. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot. American through and through. And I'll fight for this land I love. From the sea, the ground up, from high above, I'm a patriot.
All right, every Friday morning just after 7:30, we tell stories of service to pay our respects and to salute the men and women who serve in our country through the armed forces and our U.S. military. And this morning, we will tell you the story of a U.S. Air Force pararescueman who earned a medal for heroism after he treated 7 of his fellow service members who were hit by a blast while in Afghanistan in 2019. Staff Sergeant Michael Rogers of the 57th Rescue Squadron received the Air Force Sergeants Association Pitsenbarger Award for his valor after intelligence led him to a Taliban headquarters building, which was home to explosives, ammunition weapons, and radio equipment. The first thing that comes to mind, Rogers said in an interview with military.com, there were so many things covered in fuel and burning. It looked apocalyptic. Rogers, alongside the Special Forces unit he was with, began sifting through the munitions, though he was pulled away by a teammate. Moments later, an explosion rocked the unit. The soldiers initially thought they were under attack, but it was discovered to be an isolated incident. I was looking at one of the guys organizing the pile through my night vision goggles when all of a sudden we saw a flash and heard 2 bangs, Rogers said. We then felt the concussive force from the explosion and immediately thought we were under attack, so we prepared to fight back. Rogers recalled one of the engineers being blown into a ditch while a communications sergeant was set ablaze by nearby rocket-propelled grenade fuel. An intelligence sergeant was also set on fire, and ammunition on his kit began to discharge. Rogers stripped the gear of his burning teammates and directed another service member to apply tourniquets to stem the bleeding of one of the wounded parties. Rogers and others expended 3 medical bags during their efforts, all while explosions were still going off around them. 6 of the 7 wounded survived the incident, though the intelligence sergeant was pronounced dead at the hospital. We kept trying to resuscitate the sergeant as best we could on the way to the hospital, Rogers said. After about 30 minutes at the hospital, the medical staff assessed his condition and determined he wasn't sustainable. He continued, the intelligence sergeant was an ultimate professional. He's definitely the best intel operator I've ever known. He was key to ours and the Afghan success that winter. Being able to hold that region, a large portion of it was due to his efforts. He really cared and believed in his mission. Rogers said he was grateful for the award, but maintained that he would not have done anything different. The men I was with did not have much to work with. Everybody that was there was passionate about their job and doing it right. This loss wrecked our team. Losing families, losing a brother, those men I was with are our absolute heroes, and I would fight alongside them any day, anywhere. Today we highlight the efforts of U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Michael Rogers of the 57th Rescue Squadron pararescuemen, who helped save the lives of 6 of 7 of his brothers after a massive explosion at a Taliban base in Afghanistan in 2019. Today we salute Staff Sergeant Michael Rogers for his efforts in earning a medal for heroism after treating 7 of his fellow service members who were hit by a blast while serving in the Middle East. Every Friday morning just after 7:30 we pay tribute to our servicemen and women, and once again today we salute Staff Sergeant Michael Rogers of the U.S. Air Force. If you'd like to highlight a veteran in your life, an active duty service member, please send us an email, shoot us a direct message through the various platforms in which you can communicate with us, and we would be happy to tell their story as part of our weekly Salute to Service segment right here on the Big Talker FM.
Got the call to leave today. My team and I are gone away. Where to, how long? Well, that's a need to know. You can bet on us, 'cause we're good to go. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American through and through. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above. I'm a patriot. It's tough at home, but they know the drill. We've been doing it for years. Good goodbyes at the terminal gate. Little faces washed with tears. Well, it's plain to see it's my family. They pay a price too, and it shows. It's the fear in their eyes, it's my baby's cries, praying that I come back home. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American through and through. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above, 'cause I'm a patriot. Folks always ask me how it feels defending my country. I'm proud to fight for the stars and stripes, 'cause freedom isn't free. It's not will I live or will I die, but will I let my brothers down? Can I live with what I've seen and done? Will I even be around? It's hard to see and it's killing me, but the price I can't let show. It's a pain in my eyes, it's my alibis. I wonder if I come back home. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American, tried and true. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above, 'cause I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot. Damn right my heart beats true. I'm a patriot.
Hey, I'm learning so many great things about CBD from my team. Linda, for example, loves it for sleep and relaxation.
Sean, I can't say enough good things about this product, and it really has worked wonders. Gets all that anxiety out of my shoulders, and I go right to sleep at night after I take one of their sleep gummies.
She swears by it, as do many of my friends. It's a natural, healthy alternative to pharmaceuticals. By the way, ask your doctor, and I'll bet you're going to hear about the potential health benefits of CBD, and that's because it interacts with our regulatory system responsible for sleep and emotional response, inflammation, and even memory. The bottom line is CBD could be your natural path to better sleep, a calm mind, and discomfort after physical activity. They now have over 2 million customers, no prescription required. CB Distillery, the only source we here at the Sean Hannity Show trust. Just go to cbdistillery.com, enter the promo code PATRIOT, and you get my special discount. Just enter the word PATRIOT when you go to cbdistillery.com.
Not available in Idaho, Iowa, and South Dakota.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina, practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Acoustic wave therapy at the Frank Institute is a revolutionary treatment for inflammation, issues of blood flow, and is a solution for the constant suffering of chronic pain. Through the localized transmission of sound waves, stem cells are stimulated to bring about restored blood flow, vascular regeneration, and the disbursement of pain receptors to affected areas. If you've been told that your issues could not be treated without surgery or prescription, give us a call. Non-invasive, non-surgical, and prescription-free. Acoustic wave therapy is only available at the Frank Institute. Call today, 910-679-8534, and ask about acoustic wave therapy.
Hey, I'm Yael Ossowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
All right, we're 14 minutes in front of the hour here on the Big Talker FM. Our friend Chad Adams is going to join us just after 8 o'clock as we got, of course, new guidance from the Centers for Disease Control yesterday. Pretty incredible coincidence that the CDC came to this great news on Thursday afternoon. So now if you're fully vaccinated, you can drop the mask indoors or outdoors. What a coinky-dink, huh, that the CDC came to this conclusion just as the Harris-Biden administration started to catch some flack across the board, facing all sorts of issues, both here and abroad. Obviously, the situation in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestinians at each other's throats, as they have been for centuries over the Gaza Strip, that fighting continues even as we broadcast to you here today. We've got 178,000 illegal migrants that were apprehended at the southern border in the month of April alone, the highest numbers that we have seen in two decades. Think about that, 178 plus thousand illegal migrants apprehended at the southern border just in the month of April. This time last week, we were receiving the pathetic jobs report, the underwhelming news that as the experts and the economists were predicting some 1 million new jobs to get our workforce back up and running after depleting our economy for the better part of the past year. An underwhelming 266,000 jobs created last month. A pathetic jobs report. And then, of course, the situation with the gas supply and the inability to transport gasoline up and down the East Coast after a cyber attack on the largest pipeline that moves from the Northeast through the Mid-Atlantic into the South, ultimately landing in Houston, Texas. So we've got all this going on just in the past week, facing a bunch of different, what many would consider crises in our country. The narrative desperately needed to be changed. That's not to say we're jumping up and, clicking our heels together in applause that the CDC has finally lifted this guidance. Frankly, guidance that many of us have not been paying attention to for the better part of the last several months, along with many other states across the country. Never mind the fact that multiple states across the country had, basically thrown the CDC guidance to the side a long time ago. We're talking about coming up on a year since states like Georgia, Florida, Texas reopened in relatively quick fashion. They did it within 3-4 months last year after getting a handle on the situation as far as who the virus impacted most, what we had to consider along with protecting, of course, the most vulnerable, those who have other comorbidities and health issues. These states, like Georgia, like Florida, like the state of Texas, said, you know what? We need to get our kids back to school. We need to operate in a way that is assessing risks, but also in a situation where we understand that there will be massive consequences on the back end of this, and we need to mitigate those as much as possible. These states, of course, were criticized, labeled as irresponsible, yet here we are today with a number of issues facing our country, both domestically and internationally, in need of a story that made the people comfortable for the first time in maybe over a year. And here comes the CDC on Thursday telling the American people that if you are fully vaccinated, you do not need to wear a mask, whether that be indoors or outdoors. The narrative desperately needed to be changed. I'm wondering, and will we ever get a response from, say, the CDC director? Just a few weeks ago, the director of the CDC was telling us that we were facing, quote, an impending doom if we continued to move forward with the reopening of our country. Look it up. It's all there for you to see and hear. The CDC director just a few weeks ago was telling us that America was facing an impending doom based on states reopening and foregoing the different mandates and restrictions that have labeled us non-essential for the better part of the past year. And now, here we are, just a couple of weeks later, and the CDC director and their new guidelines tell us, quote, it's now safe to go back to normal life. This all happened within a month. To me, it's not a coincidence. It's amazing what bad economic reports, gas and truck driver shortages can lead to, bad job recovery numbers, conflict in the Middle East, the southern border is a train wreck. This is what we would call deflection. They needed this BS to distract the American people. Literally, the CDC, within the last month, told us we were facing impending doom, and now, well, we can forgo the masks. This is, of course, why we've been hesitant the whole time over the course of the past year to listen to, quote, the experts. Speaking of the experts, the Attorney General of the United States was testifying in front of Congress earlier this week. Mind you, much of the East Coast was dealing with a massive issue surrounding the ability to access fuel to continue their way of life on a regular basis. And there are a number of things that went into this that again, the hysteria, the fear that ultimately was pushed on the American people by our quote-unquote leaders, along with the media, stirred all this up. If we could have gone back to over the weekend and even on Monday. It took 4 days, by the way, for our commander-in-chief to address this at length as he did yesterday, telling us not to worry and to not panic buy. Well, that would have been nice to hear from him, 4 days ago, 5 days ago, before all hell broke loose across much of the East Coast. The issues that we see with price gouging laws and leveling the price of certain products in emergency situations and how that just compounds the emergency situation. How many of you would have went to the gas station if it was $7 a gallon of gas this week to go fill up your tank plus 6 other 5-gallon containers? If it was $7 a gallon of gas. A majority of people would have said, well, I got enough gas. Let's see how this weighs out. I'll limit some of my activities and my transportation, and only those who would vitally need those resources would then go out and purchase them. This is why these anti-gouging laws are outdated and go against everything and anything that benefits the American people when we talk about emergency situations and the ability to keep the economy moving. Yael Ossowski will, in fact, address this topic when he joins us just after 9:30 this morning from the Consumer Choice Center. So while the CDC comes out with this news this week, and on the same week, of course, where there were shortages at the pump because of a cyber attack on one of the biggest gas pipelines in the country, supplying over half the gasoline to Americans on the East Coast. Well, the Attorney General of the United States was testifying in front of Congress and telling members of Congress that the greatest threat facing our country right now is, you guessed it, white supremacy. Attorney General Merrick Garland told Congress Wednesday that white supremacists pose the most dangerous threat to our democracy. Not the 178,000 people who are apprehended at our southern border, overwhelming our systems to the point where we are now relocating many of those illegal migrants to states like, yes, here in North Carolina. 800 illegal immigrants has since been relocated to the city of Greensboro over the past couple of weeks, and in many other cities all across the country. This not a threat to our democracy and the way of life for Americans, particularly those Americans that these same politicians tell us that they are working to support those left behind, those on the lower socioeconomic scale, to give them a hand up, these are the same people impacted the most by relocating illegal immigrants and migrants detained at our southern border into cities all across our country. The greatest threat to democracy doesn't have to deal with the fact that many of our kids, at the tune of 3 million kids, dropped out of school last year because we refused to listen to the science and the data in reopening our places of education. That not a threat to our democracy. The fact that a random ransomware attack infiltrating the cyber networks of one of our biggest gas and oil companies in the country, shutting down half the gasoline supply to Americans on the East Coast, that not a threat atop the list of our Attorney General of the United States as far as a threat to our democracy. Of course, in these efforts to continue to stir the pot, the doom and gloom, let's look at the white supremacists out there as far as the most dangerous terrorist threat facing our country. That was the assertion made this week by the Attorney General of the United States. Look at all the things going on here in our country and abroad, and this is what our leaders are talking about in our nation's capital. Chad Adams going to join us just after the top of the hour news break. We'll also hear from David Morgan in the third hour. We'll be talking about inflation and what Americans can do to protect themselves as the cost of everything continues to rise. Will we see $4 at the pumps in the not-so-distant future? David Morgan is the chief editor of The Morgan Report, and he will join us to give us his thoughts on, well, the inability for us to get back up and running the way we were, just 14 months ago. So sad to see where we were 14 months ago. Yeah, a lot of noise. We're moving into an election year. But the economy was rolling. People had opportunities. We were at some of the lowest levels ever seen in the history of our country as it relates to unemployment in this nation. And here we are 14 months later, across the board. Many of the issues that many of us weren't thinking about 14 months ago, we now have to face head on as it relates to our children, our school-aged kids, economic opportunities, the fact that the government continues to pay millions of Americans additional benefits to stay home, while many small businesses are now grappling with the fact that, well, after a year we weathered a storm of being labeled as non-essential, and now we can't find enough workers to go about our way of life that we once knew it as. Here we are. It's May 14th, 2021. Chad Adams going to join us after the top of the hour news break. But first, I want to tell you about our friends at Bugno Pest Control, the #1 pest control company in Wilmington, rated by Home Advisor for 3 years in a row. Dennis and his son DJ, a family-owned and operated business, 20 years of experience, locally owned and operated, right here in the Port City. Put Bugno's experience to work for you. They just came around the house about a week or so ago, interior and exterior as far as the pests go. And in the backyard, their mosquito control formula, as the summer months approach and the warmer weather is upon us, those pesky mosquitoes create a real pain in my rear end when I'm out grilling up some of John Mullen's USDA prime beef on my grill in the backyard. Now Sophia can play in the backyard comfortably without all of those mosquito bites, thanks to the mosquito control formula sprayed by our friends at Bugno Pest Control in my backyard. That's Bugno, the #1 pest control company in the area, rated by Home Advisor for 3 years in a row. Call Bugno today, and you'll get 20% off your initial contract when you tell them you heard about their business right here on the Big Talker FM. That's Bugno at 910-367-2501, 910-367-2501. Find them online at bugnopestcontrol.com. That's bug, B-U-G-N-O, pestcontrol.com.
Keeping Wilmington informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Clugston.
After yesterday's White House meeting with a group of GOP senators, the president described the ongoing talks as a good faith effort.
I am very optimistic that we can reach a reasonable agreement.
He said Republicans will return next week with a counteroffer to his proposal. Major sticking points include the size of the spending package and how to pay for it.
GOP Senator Rick Scott of Florida saying the Biden economic program is stifling job growth.
Senator Scott tells the Salem Radio Network it didn't take President Biden long to introduce policies that are hard on the U.S. economy.
What, about 100 days? Look at all the problems in this country that Biden has created.
Senator Scott says that the president almost appears intent on punishing business owners.
You know, to increase their regulations, make it harder to get a permit, raise their taxes. I mean, that's not how you get more jobs in this country.
Senator Scott says unpopular Biden policies have prompted large numbers of potential candidates to express an interest in running for office next year. Bob Agnew reporting.
Israel is massing troops along the border with Gaza and is calling up 9,000 reservists as fighting with Hamas terrorists intensifies. Some 1,800 rockets have been fired indiscriminately into Israel, the Israeli military responding with more than 600 airstrikes and shelling some areas with tank fire. On Wall Street this morning, Dow futures up 170 points, NASDAQ futures ahead 139. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Tell me why Relief Factor is so successful in lowering or eliminating pain. I'm often asked that question. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father and son founders of Relief Factor, tell me they believe our bodies were designed to heal. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, 100% drug-free ingredients that each help your body deal with inflammation. Order the 3-week quick start now. Discount it to only $19.95 to see if it will work for you too. Call 800-500-8384. ReliefFactor.com.
Progressive Motorcycle presents Road Wisdom from the Motor.
Half man, half motorcycle.
You never really stop riding in your mind. Never. Unless you're thinking of something else.
Like other thoughts.
Progressive Motorcycle also presents Roadside Assistance. Progressive Motorcycle, for those who were born to ride. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Chinese scientists are preparing to land a 6-wheeled rover on Mars in the coming days.
China's Tianwen mission to Mars is ambitious. It's attempting to complete in a matter of months 3 feats that the U.S. took years to accomplish. The Tianwen, or Questions to Heaven spacecraft, has been orbiting Mars since February. And as early as Saturday, Beijing time, it will attempt to land a craft through the planet's thin atmosphere and then use a rover to collect data on Mars topography, geology, and climate. Once largely dismissed by the international community, China's space program has become a symbol of national pride.
The BBC's Celia Hatton. Japan's Honda Motor Company is back in the black, recording a $2 billion profit despite the impact of the pandemic. Quarterly sales rose almost 5% to $33 billion. News and analysis at townhall.com. Conservative Representative Chip Roy of Texas will launch a last-minute long-shot bid for GOP conference chair, challenging Representative Elise Stefanik, who has the endorsement of former President Trump and top House GOP leaders.
Stefanik has been running unopposed for the number 3 leadership post that became vacant when House Republicans on Wednesday voted to remove Congresswoman Liz Cheney from the job. Both Stefanik and Roy will meet with rank-and-file Republicans during a candid forum with a closed-door vote set for Friday morning. Roy made waves this week when he sent a memo to colleagues saying Stefanik was too liberal to represent the 212-member conference. Stefanik previously was a leader of a group of moderate Republicans before becoming one of Mr. Trump's most vocal defenders on Capitol Hill. Bernie Bennett in Washington.
And watching Wall Street this morning, looks like we're headed for a higher open later on. Right now, Dow futures are up 170 points. NASDAQ futures ahead 130 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
All right, we are back here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM, coming to you once again from the Gulf Coast of Mobile, Alabama this morning. Back to the Carolina coast at the Big Talker 106.7 FM and at BigTalkerFM.com. Various platforms in which you can tune into the broadcast these days, of course, on our social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on Facebook and Twitter. Our mobile app, newly updated mobile app, available for you iPhone users in the Apple iStore. And for those who have an Android device like yours truly, you can find us in the Google Play Store by searching Big Talker 106.7 FM. I want to give a big shout out to Tiffany here this morning. She's with us as she puts together our dining room. As you know, the college kids, they sure do have a great way of life. They get to hang out until midnight, what their curfew was last night. They sleep in. They have a 10 o'clock in the morning breakfast. As I mentioned yesterday, I call 10 a.m. Lunchtime where I'm from. And then, what do you know? They get to go play baseball later tonight and enjoy the fruits of their labor as far as wrapping up a spring semester that we saw conclude across the country at many of our colleges and universities 1 week ago. Chad Adams with us this morning. And Chad enjoying his morning, I'm sure, along our beautiful coastline across the river in Brunswick County. Chad, it's a pleasure as always, my friend, and good morning to you.
Well, good morning, Joe, and a special shout-out to you and TK, man, pulling all these remote broadcasts off. You know, you're all over everywhere in the Southeast and a couple other places as well. Hey, you can do this for businesses. You can do this for baseball teams. It's pretty remarkable because I know how much work goes into pulling this off, and so you guys are doing a great job.
Hey, and with that said, Chad, 20 years ago, this would be, relatively impossible to the point where, we're just connected through basically a laptop, a Wi-Fi hotspot, and it basically goes on without a hitch. Years ago, I'd be sitting out maybe at the top of the team bus with an antenna and trying to figure out a way to connect us through some type of landline maybe on the phone. It's amazing how technology has changed over the past 20 years, and I bring that up because a big topic this week, of course, surrounding technology and cybersecurity. And when we talk about infrastructure these days, Chad, why is this not included in a $2.6 trillion piece of legislation that's being laid out by the Biden administration as far as protecting some of these and investing in some of these vital assets to make sure something like this does not cripple parts of our country like it has this week?
Well, the beauty of a free market is that it also has shortcomings. It evolves. It becomes better. I'm not inclined to think I want the government, investing. And it's a terrible phrase. Government doesn't invest. It actually gets money from people who earn it, and then it spends it on things that it believes are priorities. I'm a strong believer that, Colonial had an aging infrastructure with respect to technology. There's a lot of effort, that they have a wonderful, huge company that unfortunately we're overly reliant on because there hasn't been enough competition in their space. But they actually had a very frail, a well-documented shortcoming in their tech department, in their cybersecurity area that's been identified for a long time, and it was exploited. And it looks like they paid off a $5 million ransom. Now, I don't know all the details there. I'm not going to pretend to, but it appears at this time, because the Biden administration was asked about it, hey, did you know they paid a ransom? And he kind of acted like he didn't know. But I'm inclined to think that's what free market capitalism is about, is competition, people trying to stay on the cutting edge to ensure they have some integrity. Look, our company's been attacked numerous times. We're a small company. We're not a large company. And we have some really talented people that are on the back side of this thing, with TK and Yael and others that are looking and watching and seeing. And like I said, that groups have been trying to exploit us for some time. So I don't want the government getting involved in my business. I don't. I want them to stay away from it as much as they can, as much as possible, even though the left constantly pushes back. I wasn't a huge fan of the government providing that last mile of internet service all over the state. I think that's a job for the free market as well in many ways, but we're turning the internet into a public utility like water and sewer. And a lot of water systems are privatized in this country, but we're seeing more and more that the internet is the way the government sees it, almost like a highway system. And they want to ensure and build and protect it. Now, I'm not inclined to think that the government will do that better than the free market.
Well, with that said, I think many companies, and we had a cybersecurity expert on yesterday, assessing these risks, and you made mention of basically an audit that had been conducted in a review. Private consultants get hired, tell you, where you're weak, where you're strong, what needs to be invested on. And Colonial, from our indications, based on this report that I'm looking at this morning, they've known this for years. Dating back to 2018, a 6-month audit was conducted, and as far as what they did to address some of these vulnerabilities, they're a private company, so we don't know much. But when we talk about the ability to expand upon some of these resources with competition, it's not just the Colonial Company or the Keystone Pipeline. We're looking across the board. Politicians, bureaucrats, activists, they're working diligently to kill and block all of these additional ways in which we should be tapping into our resources and transporting these resources through what we know as these pipelines. I mean, no pipeline should be serving half of the East Coast's fuel consumption.
Well, there's an argument to be made that it's an efficient way to do that. Even the Biden administration, under questioning, the Energy Secretary Granholm, was asked about the pipeline, and remember, the first act of the Biden administration was to kill, the pipeline from Canada, bringing, some raw product down into the United States, and yet she said the most efficient way to deliver product is a pipeline. It's just that the irony of that statement wasn't lost on many of our listeners and a lot of other folks. But it's one of these things that energy is a oft-debated topic. Tesla led the electric car revolution in many ways. Even though there were multiple hybrids already in the market, Tesla capitalized on a lot of government resources and kind of monopolized it for a while. But now you see Ford's coming out with the Mustang that's electric. The F-150 is coming out with an electric version of it. So that market is very competitive. And I happen to believe that the greatest way for us to have efficiency and competition is capitalism. And what I don't want is I don't want government subsidizing one group over another and picking those winners and losers, as we see with Apple. Apple's already a multi-trillion-dollar company, and the state of North Carolina gives them $1 billion tax break so they can quash any other upstarts that are in a garage somewhere trying to be the next Apple.
Chad, yesterday we got guidance, and it was like people partying in the streets when the CDC came to this new conclusion that if you're fully vaccinated, you can drop the mask. I mean, what happened over the course of, 3 weeks? The CDC director 3 weeks ago was predicting, quote, impending doom on our country as far as the coronavirus. And now, somehow, some way, it's back to normal life for those who get inoculated with the COVID vaccine. How do we get from here to there over the course of 3 weeks?
Either the vaccines work or they don't. And if they don't, then why are we giving them to everybody? If they do, then why aren't we going on with freedom and life and liberty and pursuit of happiness? And it was ironic to me that our governor, our genius reactionary governor, who's practiced more political science than actual science, has gone about and actually was at the news conference in a mask. Now, he's been vaccinated. The people in the room have been vaccinated. It's a very small room. He's not allowing full press conferences, but he wants to push this thing into the summer for some reason. But I think he's been put in a box now because even the CDC, now the World Health Organization, which has lost all legitimacy in the eyes of the public because of its ties to China and its inability to actually investigate the origins of the virus, they're really lost in the wilderness. The CDC, I think, has been caught in many uncomfortable positions with changing guidance and evolving. And I think the entirety of this coronavirus pandemic has undermined the public's belief, trust, in public officials and has made them question, and we should question, but we've gotten to the point where it's gone beyond questioning, that they've just lost a lot of credibility, and they own that. But now our governor's got to react to this. The president, it's amazing. The other day they're sitting in a room, all of them are masked up. They've all been vaccinated, and now the CDC said, yeah, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. And the president had to come out and say, folks, if people are still wearing their mask indoors, don't give them any scorn. And the irony of that one to me was hilarious, because it's not the people that were wearing masks that were getting scorned. We could kind of laugh at them when they're in their mask and they're driving around or walking on the beach in masks. We can laugh at them quietly. We don't ridicule them. But if you didn't wear your mask, the people that weren't wearing the mask were the ones that were getting the scorn and ridicule and being attacked in public. So we'll see how this all plays out. But our governor's got to play catch up. And so many folks have got to. Now that means that you can eat indoors if you've been vaccinated without a mask on. That's great news. We're going to be out of this. We're entering the next phase of freedom. And we'll see how far the Democrats go in embracing that.
Chat on the political front. Let's look at the two major political parties because, and we'll start on the Democrat side. We've got a situation going on in the Middle East with Israel defending itself from these terrorist attacks that spike up from time to time. And even Grandpa Joe, I don't know if he misspoke yesterday or didn't realize what he said. He basically told the American people that Israel has, quote, a right to defend itself when you have thousands of rockets flying into your territory. He made that statement yesterday. You would consider that maybe a bold statement by a Democrat president, given some of the ideas and some of the thoughts and beliefs by some on his political party, particularly those on the far left. The Rashida Tlaibs of the world, the Ilhan Omars of the world, the AOCs of the world. So the Democrats kind of in a rock and a hard place right there with the commander-in-chief telling us Israel has a right to defend itself, while others, of course, have other thoughts on this situation that's playing out on the other side of the world.
Well, certainly and this is on the international stage, it's a rather complex chessboard, and oftentimes this administration gets caught playing a little bit of checkers in that chess match. And John Kerry's no more vivid example was the Iranian deal that John Kerry had 8 years ago that was absolutely a frail piece of what. It just didn't work, and it was a horrible deal. It was great for the Iranians, but terrible for the U.S. Tons of stuff being given to the Iranians, and they're not having to do a lot to comply. Now, once you show weakness, and this administration, the Iranians felt that the Biden administration was very weak. John Kerry was back in play. And so when you have weakness like that, and people like the Iranians had multiple gunships that approached our vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. They had several of them that we had to fire to give them warning shots. That shows weakness. And so then Hamas comes around, which is a terrorist organization that we acknowledge as a terrorist organization, but has friends that think that they're these peaceful, loving Palestinian groups, and they're not. I mean, having stood on the border there in Sderot, just on the other side of Gaza, and seeing how when you imagine going to a community college and you have bomb shelters for bus stops. And that's literally what life is like down there. It should be peaceful. It should be, if they were in attempting to be peaceful, they wouldn't be firing unguided missiles. You're just throwing them down into Israel. And that's a problem, and it's a serious problem. A lot of Palestinians don't feel that way, but these terrorist organizations do. And many Democrats have supported Israel and continue to support them, but they do have a schism within their party. Like you said, that squad, that left-leaning, that give a head nod to openly terroristic groups, and that's a problem for them. So we'll see. Israel does have a right to defend itself. They're an ally over there. We've had 4 years of peace in the Middle East, and now, they sense weakness in this administration, and people are testing the limits of the Biden administration early on in the first, 100-plus days of his administration.
And that's, of course, the situation just between, Israel and these terrorist organizations in that region of the Middle East. In other parts, the Strait of Hormuz just this past week, U.S. Coast Guard firing warning shots to, Iranian boats that got a little too close to comfort for, our U.S. military. Another test early on, internationally for this administration.
Now, certainly the Chinese, the North Koreans, everyone's kind of provoking, the Chinese announcing a Mars initiative. They're going to land a probe on Mars, and they have they have absolutely said that the moon and Mars they believe is their domain. And so they're pushing ahead. This administration is going to be tested. It's problematic for them because they're more reactionary than having kind of a clear doctrine with respect to what the U.S. presence and what the U.S. is going to be like. Even in Alaska, not long ago, when the Chinese and U.S. ambassadors met up in Alaska, we were lectured by the Chinese, because when the Biden administration starts talking about how terrible our country is and how racial injustice is and how horrible we are, then the Chinese lecture us and said, you have no right to tell us about anything about our labor camps when you openly say your country is a racist country. You openly criticize and talk about how bad your own country is. So when you fix your problems, then you can come talk to us. And even on our worst day, we're better at treating people than the Chinese. But for the Biden administration to put us down and then get lectured by the Chinese is an embarrassment.
178,000+ people apprehended at our southern border just in the month of April last month, all trying to get into a systematically racist country. It just doesn't add up when you hear some of these things.
No, but think about what you just said. Think about what you just said. 178,000 people. Think about the population of North Carolina. That's larger than all but like 5 cities. In 1 month, that's how many people are coming in. And the Biden administration created that one. When you tell people to come here, you're not going to turn them back. Guess what? They take you at your word, and they come here. This is yet again another bad policy that this joke of an administration is putting forth out there. And Joe, 51 plus days that Kamala Harris has been in charge of the southern border, hasn't been there, hasn't had a news conference about it. So it's no wonder we're lost in the wilderness on that one. It's the Biden administration stopping the wall so that tells people come. It's ridiculous.
Well, now let's look over to the Republican Party. Obviously, a bit of a divide right now following this vote to strip Liz Cheney of her leadership role. Well, one thing's for sure, no matter which political party we're talking about, I don't think I've seen this much news coverage for somebody as the number 3 in the minority party of Congress get this much news coverage. And even the decently informed American citizen could probably be unable to tell you what the role of the number 3 in the minority party of Congress, what their responsibility is as far as legislatively, and the way in which their roles and responsibilities are upped when you get into that position. I would say probably 8 out of 10 people couldn't tell you what Liz Cheney does on a day-to-day basis as the number 3. But with that said, the narrative has been set by the mainstream media. The GOP is in turmoil. The Trump MAGA takeover of the GOP is here, and it's fractured. It's fractured to the point where people are going to disavow the Republican Party, and they're in shambles. Give us your thoughts on where we're at right now with that.
Well, the media loves to create this narrative that there's this fealty, that there's this adherence, there's this blind allegiance to Donald John Trump. And what they fail to realize is Trump was a reaction to the way people felt about D.C. He symbolized how people already felt. He didn't create this army. That army was there. And it's been despising D.C. and the way it's acted for many, many years. And the Republicans and Democrats, in many ways, the ones that were there, the swamp dwellers, didn't do anything about it. For those of you doing your taxes out there, you know what I'm talking about, how archaic and ridiculous and ludicrous our tax code is. There's a pox on both parties that created it and created the carve-out. It's just ridiculous. It's 10 times thicker than the Bible with respect to regulations. Now, so Trump symbolizes the reaction and against the swamp. And so the defenders of the swamp, Liz Cheney thinks she's defending the party. She's not. And the reason she's heroic, as you just articulated, the media loves her, and the Democrats love her because she opposes her own party. That's the only reason she's getting a lot. She's not even popular in her home state of Wyoming right now. So all of these people that are standing up and pushing back and trying to drain the swamp, so to speak, that are there in the Republican Party right now, it's not that they have a fealty to Donald John Trump. It's that they have a fealty to draining the swamp. And that's the real dichotomy here. It's nothing about the president. The president symbolizes that. The former president, he absolutely believes that. And many people that listen to this show have the same feeling. They're sick of D.C. And Donald John Trump was the first one who stood up against it and said, you know what, I don't care how hard they come at me. I don't care what they say about me. And he can brag, and he could have misled in many ways, but he did have an absolute adherence to draining that swamp and did more in 4 years than any president in our lifetime, including Reagan, with respect to standing up against this omniscient, omnipotent D.C. swamp.
Yeah, I think by and large, many people, enjoy the support, continue to support just because, of the ruffling of the feathers, making, elites and people that, are above the average everyday, American, making them, uncomfortable in their suits, making them squirm a little bit. And I think that's by and large why he continues to get so much support.
Well, he does, and Liz Cheney, like I said, it's the irony is she doesn't realize that she's being used. She's being used as a foil, and other than her opposition to Trump, what is her stance on the issues? They don't confront her on the issues. The issue really is the division in the party that they claim, but they don't ask her, okay, how do you feel about border security? How do you feel about taxes? How do you feel about capital gains? How do you feel about the role of government? Those are the questions that really define who you are, as whether you're conservative or progressive, liberal. Those are the issues, and they're not. They're just focused on the really surface, esoteric. Liz Cheney doesn't like Trump, and Trump is the leader of the party. And the truth of the matter is, the people who want to drain the swamp can't stand Liz Cheney, and that happens to be the bulk of conservative ideology right now, other than the never-Trumpers that are just lingering out there, lost in the woods like Bill Kristol.
And with that said,
and so I don't know if there's Joe. I think Joe's there.
I'm here and looking for Joe.
Oh, okay. So we're on the air.
Yes, sir. We're still on the air.
Okay.
I think the Wi-Fi.
Joe's communicating via his Mobile, Alabama. So I'll just stay here until Joe gets back for a few minutes. But on to Joe's.
Oh, the computer was telling me he was connected.
Well, to Joe's point, though, as we look around with what's going on right now, we're seeing the lineup. How is the Biden administration going to deal with what's happening out there? They've got an economic crisis on their hands. They have an energy crisis on their hands. And many of these things are their own creation. The southern border is of their creation. And all of these things add up to quite a mess, a reactionary president, rather than one that's been able to get out there and organize the way in which they believe the world should function. And it's so funny because the Trump administration was really about doctrinal, saying, we want government out of your lives. We want to get the bureaucracy out of the way. We want to cut back on regulations. It was very clear, and it's going to have an America First mentality. This administration's reacting to the events of the day. And
Chad,
with that, I'm hoping my good buddy Joe's back.
Yeah, I'm back. And, Chad, I just wanted to give you a little dry run for Monday's fill-in appearance. So I just wanted to mute my microphone to make sure you're okay. No, we had a glitch in the feed, and we got reestablished fairly quickly. I just kind of want to wrap up because we addressed kind of the state of both of the major political parties in our country. In North Carolina, for instance, though, to look at what Americans overall think about these D's and R's, these political parties are bleeding members. I mean, you see it in the voter registration numbers. People are fleeing Democrats and Republicans and looking at a more unaffiliated, independent way of moving through the political circles.
Well, I'd say that if you look at the number of people that are registering, that they're still growing, but they're growing. The unaffiliated are growing faster than the other two. Republicans are growing faster than Democrats. The Democrats certainly are not growing. They're virtually zero growth. But the issue is, I think that people are just, it's not that we're more left-leaning or right-leaning in the state. It's just a lot of people are just sick of the two parties, and they want to register unaffiliated. We'll see how that plays out over time. We're picking up another congressional seat in North Carolina because of the census. A lot of red-leaning states, Texas, Florida, also picking up congressional seats. So the Democrats are facing a serious – now, think about that. For every seat that a red state gains, it means a blue state's lost one. So that's a two. In other words, the Democrats are facing pretty serious problems in the midterms. They know this, and their grasp on power very tenuous right now at best. And they're facing some uphill battles in the Senate as well next year. So it's going to be a fascinating year to see if the Democrats are going to try to get as much of their left-leaning agenda as they can, because next year could be they want to look good next year heading into the elections. But here in North Carolina, I don't know, big Senate race next year. And North Carolina's been kind of purple, but we are a center-right state, and the degree to which Democrats can posit themselves and put forth into the public eye that they're kind of moderate, they tend to do better. Because if they push like Chapel Hill and Durham, you see those Democrats, they don't have broad appeal in North Carolina.
Chad Adams with us every Friday just after 8 o'clock, giving us the insight you hear nowhere else across southeastern North Carolina. Chad, it's always a pleasure, and thanks so much for filling in this upcoming Monday as I make my way back from the Gulf Coast. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Joe. Be safe.
Good to have Chad Adams as a good friend of mine, not only, of course, here through the Big Talker, but outside personally. Chad and I have known each other for the better part of 14, 15 years now, and it's never a dull moment when he and I get together for a conversation, whether it be in the car or face-to-face every once in a while. And then when TK joins in on the discussion, oh boy, there's all sorts of bombs being thrown at one another, given our passion for this independently owned and operated company that we've got going here, known as Red Wolf Broadcasting, as we operate WFBT, the Big Talker FM. Great to have Chad with us every Friday inside this second hour of the show. All right, we've moved into the bottom of the hour news break. We're halfway through here in this morning's broadcast, here until 10 o'clock Eastern time, of course. We're 1 hour behind back in the Central Time Zone. But with that said, let's take a time out, TK. Let's roll through some of our partners with their spots. We'll get the news break, and we'll pick it up after this.
We interrupt to bring you this horrible news. Experts say we'll see larger numbers and different breeds of mosquitoes to wreak havoc on your backyard, making this year one of the worst.
Anopheles and Culex variety mosquito.
Yeah. Experts also say there is only one defense against this onslaught. Call the Bugman from Bugno Pest Control.
That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal.
Bugno Pest Control's mosquito-killing formula keeps your yard bug-free. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501, or visit BugnoPestControl.com. Take back your yard.
This is Mark Markley, your host of Recovering Hope. I hope you can tune in this and every Wednesday evening from 6 to 7 and Sunday mornings at 10 to listen to real stories of real hope to recover from drug addiction and how so many have turned tragedies into helping others to know there is hope. You can listen to podcasts of previous shows or contact me at recoveringhope.org.
Hey, I'm Yael Ossowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
Parents, how old were you when you paid off your student loan? Are you still paying for it? Student debt can be crippling, and today it's even more important to keep debt in check. Help your student build a brighter financial future by encouraging them to attend Cape Fear Community College for the first 2 years. CFCC costs thousands less than four-year schools, and classes in our university transfer program are accepted at four-year schools across the state and beyond. Help your kids get a head start academically and financially at CFCC. Learn more at cfcc.edu.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. Drivers are finding gas pumps shrouded in plastic bags at tapped-out service stations across more than a dozen U.S. states. Shortages and panic buying continued yesterday, even as the operator of the nation's largest gasoline pipeline reported making substantial progress in resolving the computer hack-induced shutdown responsible for the empty tanks. GasBuddy.com's tracking service reported that nearly 70% of North Carolina's gas stations still were without fuel, and 73% of stations were out in Washington, D.C. Closer to home, 2 people are injured and 2 more detained following a shooting in Whiteville. Police say it happened at the Sandy Ridge Apartments just after 6:30 last night. Whiteville Police Chief Douglas Ipock says the 2 victims shot were both adults. He says they were both okay at the time of the shooting, but there's no further word on their condition. Ipock says 2 suspects were detained, but no arrests have been made at this time. The investigation is ongoing. In Pender County, a man is in jail charged with a triple homicide that happened last November. The Pender County Sheriff's Office arrested 28-year-old Michael Gage Miller Jr. yesterday. During his court appearance, Miller cried while standing in front of the judge. He claims he's innocent. Miller is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the death of William Colley III and Destiny Green, and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. Miller was arrested in Jacksonville and is being held under no bond.
And looking for work, the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office will be holding a career expo tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Brunswick County Government Complex. Anyone who may be considering a career in law enforcement is encouraged to attend. Deputies and staff will be on hand to answer questions about serving with the Sheriff's Office. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Reifenbark. Have a great day.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Haywood with your WWAY Storm Track 3 AccuWeather forecast. Mostly clear skies and a little bit on the chilly side tonight as lows drop into the upper 40s. Friday brings mostly sunny skies and pleasant weather with highs reaching into the low 70s. And our very nice weather conditions continue into the upcoming weekend. Highs will reach in the mid-70s both Saturday and Sunday with mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies. Get the full forecast on WWAY and WYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. Twomenandatruck.com.
Our call-in number is 910-299-7535 if you'd like to join in on the program here until 10 o'clock, of course. And we've got about a half-hour block now for your calls. If you'd like to discuss or add on to some of the things that we've talked about over the past 90 minutes or so. And we thank, of course, Chad Adams for joining us in the last half hour. In 1 hour from now, Yael Ossowski from the Consumer Choice Center is set to join the program as Yael, of course, is back in the States following an extended stay in where he resides permanently in Vienna, Austria, visiting family in the Carolinas. And, in fact, next week it will be in our neck of the woods in Wilmington. And we look forward to him a part of our program as we move through the next couple of days through the weekend, and I believe Yael will join us on the 18th, 19th, and 20th. He'll be with us in the Port City. So as folks continue to scramble across much of the East Coast as far as fuel consumption goes, we're starting to get a look at this key piece of infrastructure needed to be online in order for we the people to enjoy our everyday life, whether it be recreationally or whether it be reliant on fuel to do pretty much anything and everything in our country. And the all-out attack that we have seen by politicians, bureaucrats, activists to work to kill and block any efforts to move forward with these ways in which we transport natural resources in an efficient and affordable way. It's not just the Colonial Pipeline. Of course, on day one of the Harris-Biden administration, they put the axe into the Keystone XL pipeline, something that had been in the works for over a decade, leaving our the country to the north of us in Canada, leaving them, out in the wind, and here in the States, of course, eliminating jobs at the tune of hundreds and thousands of jobs when it comes to those who were working on that pipeline over the last number of years. I mean, this recent fuel disruption, I think, it shows the danger in the all-out assault that many in our government have in this long war on oil and gas and these pipelines. I mean, how a single cyber attack was able to derail an entire region of the most prosperous country in the world, disrupting the lives of millions of Americans. It's kind of baffling here in the year 2021, but I guess it's kind of par for the course. Unwilling to invest where we need, whether it be through our infrastructure privately, publicly, of course. Chad pumped the brakes just a bit in the last half hour as far as cautioning me and the rest of us who think maybe the government should have a hand in working with the private sector in beefing up some of this cybersecurity infrastructure. We're hearing, and we were told yesterday by our buddy John McCumber that many of these companies have these risk assessments and pay consultants millions of dollars to tell them something that most of us already know. You need to beef up when it comes to investing to make sure that your assets are protected. And from what we're gathering now is that Colonial, the pipeline and the company, they did not do that to the degree in which they were able to turn away this cyber attack that played out, 1 week ago. And here we are 1 week later as we see this pipeline come under attack, not only from a cyber security standpoint, but the fact that many of our, again, politicians and bureaucrats are against moving it forward. I mean, one answer that comes to mind when we talk about how this situation has disrupted our way of life for the better part of the past week, and there are a few things that go into that. Of course, the government leaders, the media taking the story and running with it very early on. The anti-price gouging, the price gouging laws that are in place. A lot of that pretty much compounded the situation as the week has progressed. I mean, only until yesterday did we hear from the President of the United States telling us that we should not be buying fuel in fear. That was 5-6 days after the initial cyber attack and when Colonial took their pipeline, offline. We, frankly, don't have enough oil pipelines in our country, which makes us vulnerable to these sorts of things. The Colonial Pipeline, as you know by now, provides about half of the fuel consumed on the East Coast. One pipeline network probably should not be serving half of the East Coast's fuel needs. And the reality of all of this is that regulatory hurdles that have been put in place have made it all but impossible to build new pipelines, which has placed a great deal of pressure on existing energy infrastructure. And it's getting worse. As these politicians are now actively scrapping these pipelines, which are instrumental in meeting our future energy needs. One of President Biden's first initiatives, as you know, was to scrap by executive order the Keystone Pipeline. That would have carried roughly 800,000 barrels of oil each day from Alberta to the Gulf Coast. Instead, the bulk of that fuel now being transported by railways, which of course is less environmentally friendly and more dangerous. Yet, our politicians, particularly those on the left, the progressives as they call themselves, scrapping the Keystone Pipeline, and this has been part of a trend that's been largely overlooked in our country. Because when we're on the up and up and fuel is $1.68 a gallon, Americans are just operating in the way of life in which we expect. But across the U.S., these pipelines are being targeted by politicians, regulators, and then these political types and these activists, of course, lawyer up and start to file lawsuit after lawsuit in the courts. Up in the state of Michigan, for instance, 1 year ago, their governor, Gretchen Whitmer, took legal action to force the shutdown of what is known as Line 5 pipeline, which links Lake Michigan and Lake Huron and carries about 500,000 barrels of crude oil each day. Here in North Carolina, we had the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Last year, Duke Energy and Dominion Energy announced the cancellation of a 600-mile project, which would have piped gas from West Virginia down the I-95 corridor here to eastern North Carolina. That would have provided all sorts of economic impacts, particularly to some of the most poverty-stricken areas within our state. Delays and regulatory uncertainty threatened the economic viability of the project. You've got the 1,200-mile Dakota Access Pipeline, which has been flowing since 2017. Currently carries hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil through the Dakotas to Iowa and Illinois. Well, the Biden administration, says they will not shut down this pipeline, but in fact, once again, you look to the courts, and a U.S. District Court judge did that. In fact, shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline in July of 2020. Now, that ruling was overturned, but the pipeline's fate hangs in the balance pending an environmental review. So for many, of course, the lesson of this is that we need more ways in which we're able to transport our fuel, our way of life across our country, despite efforts by many to pump the brakes on all of this. And, of course, as it relates to cybersecurity oversight, core elements of our infrastructure continue to be vulnerable to cyber attack. And securing our energy infrastructure, even though Chad, cautions and says maybe we shouldn't be getting the government involved in providing security to, private companies. But there's no doubt that securing our energy infrastructure is a national security issue. I mean, I guess, and I understand why we should be skeptical of centralized leadership, especially when it comes to national security issues that involve all sorts of public and private entities, given the track record, of course, of the government. So maybe what we need is not more, but less government oversight in getting in the way of these private companies putting more of these pipelines in place. And I think there's no doubt that despite the calls for green energy and renewable ways of life, that this current disruption this week is serving as a reminder to all Americans that fossil fuels are an essential part of human prosperity. And I think of our caller, Freddie the Fish, out there in Carolina Beach. By the way, I hope you enjoyed your breakfast, Frederick, over at Gulfstream. Great little spot in Carolina Beach, right over near the marina. We talk about the current disruption that we've seen up and down the East Coast. I think it should serve as a reminder to all that fossil fuels, again, are an essential part of human prosperity. And as Freddie the Fish has pointed out on multiple calls to us when talking about energy over the last several months, no one has made this point better than a guy by the name of Alex Epstein. He's the author of the book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. He has noted that cheap, plentiful fossil fuels, when married with human ingenuity, allows humans to improve the world around them. Fossil fuel technology transforms nature to improve human life on an epic scale, he writes. It is the only technology that can currently meet the needs of all 7+ billion people on this planet. Ultimately, he says the moral case for fossil fuels is not about fossil fuels. It's the moral case for using cheap, plentiful, reliable energy to amplify our abilities to make the world a better place for all. And you flip it to the other side of the coin. Well, when energy is made needlessly expensive, scarce, and unreliable, whether by cyber criminals or politicians, it makes the world a more frustrating and unhappy place for human beings. Many Americans discovered that fact this week. We're 12 minutes in front of the hour here on the Big Talker FM.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint and the co-host of Wake Up Our Faith, every Saturday and Sunday right here in Wilmington's Big Talker. We invite you to join with our nonprofit movement by participating in the Portable Faith Community. This is a $10 a month tax-deductible contribution, and you get access to daily encouragement, resources, as well as our prayer community. You can go to wakeupmyfaith.com to get subscribed and learn more. That's wakeupmyfaith.com.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
Hi, this is Justin Humphreys from the Humphreys Law Firm on Eastwood Road. The Humphreys Law Firm is located in Lumina Station, Wilmington, North Carolina. Practices civil litigation, intellectual property, commercial, and residential real estate. Please give us a call at 910-332-0721 or visit us on our website, which is www.humphreysfirm.law. You can also listen to me every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
Hear Tom Goolsby on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hey guys, what if I told you that your wedding day could be the happiest day of your life, even if it rained?
You sound like the weatherman.
Better, Jordan. I'm a jeweler with the most amazing guarantee in the diamond business. If you buy your diamond engagement ring from us at Perry's Emporium and it rains on your wedding day, your ring is absolutely free.
It's the Perry's Emporium legendary rainy day diamond guarantee.
No other jeweler in eastern North Carolina has a larger selection of loose diamonds, diamond engagement rings, and wedding bands than Perry's Emporium, all at the guaranteed lowest price. Perry's Emporium in beautiful Barclay Commons behind Henry's and on the web at perrysemporium.com.
We'll see you when you get here.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006. All right, back here on the Big Talker FM as we head into the third and final hour in just a few minutes. If you'd like to call in, our phone number is 910-299-7535. David Morgan's going to join us just after 9 o'clock back on the East Coast. He's the chief editor of the Morgan Report. We'll be talking about, once again, a hot topic across our country, particularly in our neck of the woods this week as it relates to, economic prosperity and the need to continue to tap into affordable, efficient ways of life as it relates to energy consumption in our country. David's going to give us his thoughts as to whether or not we're going to continue to see a sharp increase in gas prices beyond what we saw this week. Looking at maybe $3, $4 a gallon, not so in the distant future. So how do Americans protect themselves against this kind of meltdown that we're seeing across the board? Given that job report last week not really enlightening to many, of course, as the federal government continues to beef up and the extension of these unemployment benefits. You're starting to see more and more states, I want to say 15 states already, mainly led by Republicans, red states, have moved forward with the elimination of that extra federal government extension of those unemployment benefits to try and get their economy back up and running and people back to work. It's amazing that yesterday, of course, the CDC comes out with this new guidance. If you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. I mean, how do we go in 3 weeks? And a great thing. Everyone should be, pumping their chests and clapping their hands in the streets. I mean, it's a good thing that we're finally moving forward with some of these, situations that many have been calling for months. Many of the situations have been going on across certain states for months. Getting breaking news right now that Governor Cooper is set to announce changes to his executive orders at a news conference that is set for 1:30 this afternoon. What a coinkydink that the CDC comes to this conclusion, as we've got all sorts of news headlines that really should put in question the leadership that we have at the highest levels of our government. The CDC comes to this conclusion as the Biden administration is facing all sorts of issues, both here and abroad. We've got the situation in the Middle East we touched on a little earlier in the program. You've got 178,000 people apprehended at our southern border over the course of the month of April. Hundreds of these people are being relocated across parts of the country, including here in North Carolina. The city of Greensboro has welcomed some 800 illegal migrants over the past couple of weeks. You've got many states that have been hesitant to reopen or move forward, has created a situation where our economy is still hampered by, well, flipping the switch and shutting us down for the better part of the past year. We saw the pathetic jobs report from 1 week ago, and the gas supply situation this week. All sorts of different things going on. And in my view, given the fact that rarely you hear any sort of criticism, particularly from the main news outlets in our country, the big alphabet networks, the cable news, 24/7 news organizations, rarely getting an objective view at where this administration is taking us. And I would, in putting the pieces together here, say that the narrative desperately needed to be changed. So what do? They deflect. The CDC director just a couple of weeks ago predicted impending doom on our country. And now we're safe to go back to normal life. All happens within a month. The science and the data, right? It's pretty amazing what bad economic reports, gas and truck driver shortages, bad recovery numbers, conflict in the Middle East, the southern border, a train wreck. They needed to leave this BS to distract the American people. And many states across the country have been operating without mask mandates for months. So here we are, following the news yesterday by the CDC. 910-299-7535 is our number. Caller, you're with us here today. You got a few minutes. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous.
Did you get a chance to look at the letter from the 120 plus generals and admirals about the situation with the election security?
Yeah, no, I have not. I've been tied up with a number of different things, but I know you highlighted it yesterday. I caught the headline, but I did not read much into it.
Yeah, well, these are 120 plus of America's retired generals, and they cast great doubt on the validity of the election and of the possibility that this will destroy our republic. And I know, like Liz Cheney and all these people say, that Trump shouldn't be allowed near the Oval Office again. But the fact that there is basically no type of security for the mail-in ballots and that kind of thing, and it would be easy to do, and even, the liberals fight having voter ID and that kind of thing, where you show that you are a real person to fill out a ballot and send it in. They want every ballot counted, whether it's from a real person or from Asia, just mailed in from anywhere without any type of security. And it's worse than the security on the internet and that kind of thing, because it's the basic fundamental right in this country to an election that is fair, one person, one vote, and honest. And these guys cast doubt as to whether Biden is the legitimate president of the United States.
Yeah, we got that article pulled up right here. I found it at Yahoo. More than 120 retired U.S. generals and admirals have published an open letter suggesting that Joe Biden was not legitimately elected as president, also questioning his fitness for office. It was signed by 124 retired members of the armed forces calling themselves Flag Officers for America, claiming that America is in deep peril and has taken a hard left turn towards socialism and a Marxist form of tyrannical government. Without fair and honest elections, they say, that accurately reflect the will of the people, our constitutional republic is lost. They claim that the FBI, even the Supreme Court, ignored irregularities in 2020. The group then went on to question the physical and mental condition of the commander-in-chief. It also touched on the southern border situation, the Iran nuclear deal, and freedom of speech, along with the situation involving our adversaries in Red China. The U.S. Former military figures who signed this, most of whom who have been retired for more than 2 decades, say that soldiers today are being used as political pawns, with thousands of troops deployed around the U.S. Capitol building, patrolling fences, guarding against a non-existent threat. One of the contributors, retired Brigadier General Don Bolduc, is running for a Senate seat in New Hampshire next year. He says, we're in a fight for our survival like no other time since our founding in 1776. That's the letter that has been sent by over 120 retired U.S. generals and admirals who have published this and their thoughts, suggesting, again, that the election was not held legitimately and that he's not fit for office. Interesting take, and I think many within our audience, have these same beliefs. And in some cases, rightfully so, as our caller pointed out. We've highlighted, even here in the state of North Carolina, the chicanery that went on behind the scenes in the months leading up to the election. And on the flip side, what was it? Just 5 years ago, well, the entire Democrat Party was, of course, on their edge of their seat following the election of Donald Trump, though their ways in which they claimed the election was stolen was far different than what many others are claiming what occurred this time around. We've hit the top of the hour. David Morgan is going to join us after the break. We'll continue the conversation surrounding, the situation with gas supply shortages, the inability to get the gas transported to the necessary petrol stations. We'll talk about, this coming fossil fuel meltdown that we highlighted earlier in the program. David Morgan joins us after the break.
Keeping Whiteville informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Where we want to go. Then we need to know the best way to get there. Hi, my name is Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold. We're the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. We teach people how to own physical gold and silver. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink Award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest #1 national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000. Get the best information, the best process, the best service, the best value. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
In India, misinformation is spreading almost as fast as the coronavirus.
Fueled by anguish, desperation and distrust of the government, rumours and hoaxes are spreading by word of mouth and on social media in India, compounding the country's humanitarian crisis. While treatments such as lemon juice might sound innocuous, such claims can have deadly consequences if they lead people to skip vaccinations or ignore other guidelines. Sumitra Badrinathan, a university University of Pennsylvania political scientist, tells the AP much of the propaganda, misinformation and conspiracy theories end up political. Some people using the material to criticise the government, while others use it to support policies. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
The foreign ministers of the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary meeting with their Polish counterpart in Warsaw, discussing post-pandemic plans and strengthening ties with the U.S. Townhall.com. China accusing the United States of what it calls coercive diplomacy.
The accusation follows comments by Secretary of State Antony Blinken to his Australian counterpart that the U.S. will not abandon Australia in the face of Chinese economic coercion. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson accused the U.S. of imposing economic sanctions and strong-arming other countries over trade issues to achieve its strategic goals. Like the United States and China, Australia and China are in the midst of several major disputes as Beijing seeks to apply pressure over commerce and influence. Jeremy House reporting.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott is expected to sign a pro-life heartbeat bill that has received final legislative approval, the measure outlawing abortion after approximately 6 weeks. Once again on Wall Street this hour, Dow futures up 133, NASDAQ futures 128 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
All right, as we head into our third and final hour of our program on this Freedom Friday, coming to you once again from Mobile, Alabama this morning, back to the Carolina coast. Hope you're enjoying what looks to be a great day based on what I'm looking through, and that's our video portion of the program. Don't have to look at this mug, at least for one more day. Make it 2 days, as Chad Adams will be filling in for me on Monday as I make my way back to the coast. Monday early morning, so Chad will fill in. So you get a whole week without having to look at me through our video portion of the show. Instead, beautiful sights across the Cape Fear region, along the Cape Fear River. I see our camera is positioned here this morning, and of the battleship North Carolina. A great view and a great time to be living where we do, one of the fastest growing areas in all of the country. David Morgan is the chief editor of the Morgan Report and co-author of the book Second Chance, How to Make and Keep Big Money from the climbing gold and silver shockwave. David, it's a pleasure to have you back on our program once again. I hope you're having a good week so far.
Mr. Morgan, good morning.
All right, looks like we're having a little issue with David Morgan here this morning of the Morgan Report. You can learn more about what he does at themorganreport.com. David, are you there?
I am here. I don't know why you can't hear me, but I guess you can't.
Yeah, we're good right now, so let's move forward here. And David, what do you make of this big mess that we've seen over the past week surrounding, the rise in fuel, the limited ability to get transported to the gas stations, and what's the overall impact that this is going to have in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, unfortunately, I think it set a precedence with the fact that we paid the ransom. I think it's a precursor to more of the same in the future. I know there was a software update that Colonial didn't put into their system, but even with that, it's a back and forth between the hackers and the software for protection, and you really cannot circumvent the ability of the hackers from a software standpoint in my studied view, which means the only way to circumvent these type of issues is to have a hardware solution or redundancy in the software. And most companies are not prepared to do it. And it's really going to be to our detriment, I think, in the future.
Now, with that said, we're kind of in a rock and a hard place, right? Because we are opposed to a more centralized way of life in regards to the roles and responsibilities of our government. But then we see, a vital asset like the ability to get fuel up and down the East Coast to millions of people. And then you just mentioned that some of these private companies, unwilling to invest the necessary monies as they assess risk as it relates to their security. Ultimately, it hurts the consumer, right? I mean, when we get into these types of positions, because if the government sticks their hands into this, it's going to create more restriction and a rise in everything for you and me and the everyday consumer. If we stay out of it and the private companies don't make the investment, we're beholden to a cyber attack and we're taken off a line and there's chaos in the streets, the way we've seen this week.
Agreed, but I also believe that private enterprise could do it without government mandating or requiring that you have a backup system. It's possible, I might have misspoke, that there could be perhaps a software solution, or even not, there might be a minimum hardware solution. A lot of it had to do with flow rates and how much is dependent on the computers for control of what valve opens when and how much what the flow rate is, because you can't put a fire hose into a garden hose. You've got to step it down, that type of thing. So I think I would rather have free enterprise tackle the problem than have it mandated, and then it just gets complicated. It costs too much. There's inspectors. There's all this stuff that's really not required. And there could be, I don't know, because, excuse me, it's possible that there is redundancy in some of these situations. And lastly is to have a well-thought-out plan for Plan B, which we didn't, which means getting the fuel trucks on the road in a more efficient manner, how it happens, where it happens, and why it happens. So, we learned something here. Hopefully we'll take that lesson seriously and plan for the future.
Well, no question. I think we highlighted a number of things in the last half hour that bureaucrats, attorneys, and activists are doing to prevent additional pipelines and other sorts of things that would make us less reliant on just one company or one pipeline. There's been an effort to stymie the growth of this industry, and that's because many of our politicians are all in on this new way of green life, so to speak, and ultimately, again, that hits us the hardest when you try and make these radical transformations so quickly, and you step in the way of affordable and known commodities that help keep our economy going.
Joe, I think you really said something important. I mean, it's centralized. It's that one colonial was responsible for almost half of the fuel structure through the southern to east coast. Look, when you've got one mothership out there and everybody's on it, all you have to do is take out that one. Whereas if you have, 2,800 harder. And this is the thinking, as free enterprise, an advocate for it. But seeing things more and more centralized and, getting, let's say, the mainstream press into 6 conglomerates instead of, 600 or whatever. Whenever you do that, you're more vulnerable. You'll, again, only have to take one out. So I think that's the most important thing you said. Just wanted to feed it back to you because this is incorrect thinking. We need the competition. And had we had, let's say, 10 different pipeline companies, we probably wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now.
David, let me ask you, over the course of the past year, I've noticed that my grocery bill is going up. In the last several months, the cost of fuel is going up. Inflation is here, and it's increasing rapidly. And for people who have been labeled non-essential for the better part of the past year, having a real hard time, keeping up with the rise in the cost of goods, whether it be for general necessities like groceries, or to get out and about and live your life the way you once knew it. What does inflation mean for the American people? What does it mean to the financial markets? I mean, how are we supposed to stay positive when we see so much negativity out there and an uphill battle for everyday Americans?
Well, we're in a mode of, it's not going to be Zimbabwe, but it's the general idea. What we're seeing is a contraction in the physical economy, the amount of food grown, the amount of meat, the amount of jobs available, the overall health of the global economy. It's happening in the United States. It's happening around the world. It's happening in China. So a contraction means less. We're having less physical goods and services provided to the globe as a whole. At the same time, the U.S. government in particular, others as well, other central banks around the world, have decided to print wealth, print their way out of this. So you have the worst of both worlds. You have a contraction in the physical economy, especially for goods that are needed. Food, lumber, corn, you name the commodity sector, most of these commodities are on fire. And then at the same time, you've added about a 20 which is extremely inflationary. So get prepared to pay more for less. Learn to try to stay living within your means, which is going to be very difficult, and have a good attitude. Attitude is going to mean a lot. You're going to have to adapt to the situation at hand, which of course is going to be much different than it was a few years ago.
David Morgan is with us here this morning. Again, he's the chief editor of the Morgan Report and co-author of the book Second Chance, How to Make and Keep Big Money from the Coming Gold and Silver Shockwave. David, take a few minutes here to plug your book and what kind of inspired you to put this together with your co-author David Smith, and why people maybe should pick up a copy here today.
Well, thank you. I just was interested in money as a small kid. I wanted to know, how are these big buildings built, who buys the dam, and all these kind of things. So going beyond that, the book is focused on how to, it's an investment book for investors to not make mistakes. We have several strategies in there that most investors, even professionals, make from time to time. So it's a handbook of a practical way to continue to make money in whatever investment field it is. Of course, we focus on the precious metals and the resource stocks, which we feature at themorganreport.com. I would say the best thing to do is go to themorganreport.com, get on our free newsletter service, and also pull down the books tab if you're interested in Second Chance, how to make and keep big money during the coming gold and silver shockwave. Why a shockwave? Because as the fiat deteriorates more, gold and silver will start rising.
David Morgan with us here this morning. David, thanks again for the insight, and as always, it's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you, Joe. My pleasure.
All right, we're 17 minutes past the hour. Great to have David Morgan with us here this morning. You can learn more about what he does and why he does it at themorganreport.com. That's themorganreport.com. Really just a complete mess that we're in here, and you hate to continue to look into the rearview mirror, but you think of where we were, 14, 15 months ago, where we are today, and it's like two different worlds. We're in a zombie apocalypse. Maybe one could put it down as far as how things have shaken out in the past year and a half. It's just frankly, it's sad. Sad for a lot of people and millions that trying to overcome these hurdles that have been put in our in position, without any of our ability to make decisions that can improve the situation. A lot of this is in place due, frankly, to our government, restricting and labeling we the people as non-essential, whether it be non-essential businesses or non-essential workers. A sad situation there where your own government, the people elected to represent you in your best interests, labeled tens of millions of people over the course of a year's time as non-essential in your way of life. We're 18 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. Our number, 910-299-7535.
When you purchase a Golden Technology lift and sleep chair from US Med Express at 1733 Dawson Street, you get the benefit of a lift assist chair, a recliner, a memory button chair, a zero gravity chair, a Trendelenburg device, and a sleep chair. all in one of the most comfortable pieces of furniture you have ever experienced. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. U.S. Med Express.
Folks, we all know ongoing road construction and traffic can weigh heavy on your vehicle. Since 2006, O'Leary's Automotive Repair has provided comprehensive repair services at affordable prices to get you back on the road in no time. Their ASE certified technicians will help you find a cost-effective repair and maintenance alternatives. O'Leary's has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
This is Mark Markley, your host of Recovering Hope. I hope you can tune in this and every Wednesday evening from 6 to 7 and Sunday mornings at 10 to listen to real stories of real hope to recover from drug addiction and how so many have turned tragedies into helping others to know there is hope. You can listen to podcasts of previous shows or contact me at recoveringhope.org.
As Wilmington's leader in restorative and regenerative medicine, the Frank Institute specializes in health optimization. Simply put, we use in-depth evaluations and lab testing to determine the best treatments for each patient. So whether you're suffering from an unseen hormonal imbalance or a simple vitamin deficiency, the Frank Institute is ready to get you back to better living. Call us at 910-679-8534 or fill out our symptom survey online at frankinstitute.com. Because at the Frank Institute, you live, we help.
The Dave Ramsey Show, where common sense meets dollars and cents.
We live in a culture where we, the people, known as taxpayers, have allowed our elected representatives, who are apparently idiots, we elected them, so what's that make us, but anyway, to extend guaranteed loans. You and I are co-signers for 18-year-olds to take out a $100,000 loan to get a PhD in German polka history. Now, if that isn't stupid, I don't know what is. 5 from noon to 3 on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM.
All right, we are 22 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535. If you'd like to call in, our friend Yael Ossowski here with the Consumer Choice Center going to join us here in just a few minutes. And to circle back, prior to the top of the hour, we had a caller in that highlighted this open letter that was published this week by some 120 retired admirals and other, former high-ranking government officials, calling into question the 2020 election, questioning, Joe Biden's, fit, whether or not he's fit for office and his ability to, carry out the duties as required as our commander-in-chief. And, as we look into the 2020 election and for months, I mean, we have highlighted this story surrounding the questions that have been presented in certain states, specifically since we are a North Carolina-based talk show with Tom Goolsby every Tuesday, week after week, month after month, leading up in the 2020 election. We covered it for you. We gave you the lowdown as far as what was being done legislatively in the North Carolina General Assembly to adapt and adjust because of the virus and the shutdowns and all of that. What was being done in the courts through lawsuits and other, chicanery, as we will call it, with the appointed State Board of Elections and the Attorney General of our state. For months, we highlighted these stories, and we brought it to light leading up into November of 2020. After the election, we broke it down in a way that many people didn't like. But the fact of the matter was, we were right on the fact that we knew that this election was not going to be overturned, despite some of the discrepancies and other things that the workarounds, we'll call it, when it came to how many states just ignored the laws on the books and moved forward with these changes. As far as what turned out, meaning the results of the election, ultimately, has created this turmoil that still has not waned. And I completely understand it when you break some of these stories down. We have, again, highlighted this story for months surrounding election changes in places like Georgia, the state of Florida. Here in North Carolina, there's legislation moving through the General Assembly that would change election law through the legislative process. So we've talked about the new laws that are being put in place in places like Georgia, Florida. In North Carolina, what's being discussed. I'm just not sure what else to do. We have folks who call in, obviously, upset and fearful as to where we're going as a country, given how many people believe this was hijacked generally from the American people. I'm not really sure what else I can do. A condescending call telling me to look up a news article isn't going to change what we do here on a day-to-day basis. Specifically looking at North Carolina, we've highlighted this ad nauseum with Tom Goolsby, local attorney, for months on end. I do not sit on the Supreme Court. I'm not a judge. I'm not actively involved in lawsuits with organizations challenging the validity of the election results in North Carolina and across the country. I do not sit on the State Board of Elections to provide input as far as what can be changed or what lobbying needs to be done at the legislative level to get it right. I'm just not sure what else there is to say about it. That doesn't mean we don't enjoy your phone calls and the conversations that we have on a daily basis. I'm just laying out the timeline as far as what we've been doing as an individual entity, a small independently owned business and broadcast company, what we've been trying to do in order to shed light on this. Our call-in number is 910-299-7535 if you'd like to contribute to the show. Yael Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center going to join us in just a couple of minutes. And Yael has a couple of stories that we'll touch on here throughout this week that have been garnering attention that you may have not necessarily been paying attention to. That said, when we talk about the fuel situation that we've seen going on, Yael is going to take a stance here that you don't hear across much of the mainstream media. Once the state of emergency was put in place this week and all hell broke loose, in North Carolina and other places around it, then the Attorney General came down. We're going to crack down on those who are price gouging in our state as it relates to fuel. And often is the case that we see government once again getting in the way or creating a situation where people are fearful, and ultimately it compounds itself into where we're at today. No gas across much of the state, the inability for people to fill their tanks up, and a situation there where, as we saw last year, well, we're all going to stay home. Let's buy up all the toilet paper or the bread and the milk. In this case, fuel this week. Yael is going to take a stance here defending the gouging of prices. He says it's a good thing in certain situations, particularly in emergency situations, because if prices skyrocket, people are going to take a second look as to whether or not they need as much fuel, for instance, as we've seen over the course of the week. People filling their tank up and they bring 15 5-gallon, 10-gallon containers to fill it up with it. People putting gasoline in plastic bags. I mean, where are we? It's la-la land. And in due part, well, you could point the finger easily at government, the media, in creating this avalanche type of situation that we've seen play out over the past week. So we'll hear from Yael Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center. He's the host of the Consumer Choice radio show, and it airs Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock right here on the Big Talker FM. Look forward to our conversation, and it comes your way next here on the Big Talker FM.
I remember when I lost my mind.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. Drivers are finding gas pumps shrouded in plastic bags at tapped-out service stations across more than a dozen U.S. states. Shortages and panic buying continued yesterday, even as the operator of the nation's largest gasoline pipeline reported making substantial progress in resolving the computer hack-induced shutdown responsible for the empty tanks. GasBuddy.com's tracking service reported that nearly 70% of North Carolina's gas stations still were without fuel, and 73% of stations were out in Washington, D.C. Closer to home, 2 people are injured and 2 more detained following a shooting in Whiteville. Police say it happened at the Sandy Ridge Apartments just after 6:30 last night. Whiteville Police Chief Douglas Ipock says the 2 victims shot were both adults. He says they were both okay at the time of the shooting, but there's no further word on their condition. Ipock says 2 suspects were detained, but no arrests have been made at this time. The investigation is ongoing. In Pender County, a man is in jail charged with a triple homicide that happened last November. The Pender County Sheriff's Office arrested 28-year-old Michael Gage Miller Jr. yesterday. During his court appearance, Miller cried while standing in front of the judge. He claims he's innocent. Miller is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the death of William Colley III and Destiny Green, and 1 count of murder of an unborn child. Miller was arrested in Jacksonville and is being held under no bond. And looking for work, the Brunswick County Sheriff's Office will be holding a career expo tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Brunswick County Government Complex. Anyone who may be considering a career in law enforcement is encouraged to attend. Deputies and staff will be on hand to answer questions about serving with the Sheriff's Office. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Hey guys, what if I told you that your wedding day could be the happiest day of your life, even if it rained?
You sound like the weatherman.
Better, Jordan. I'm a jeweler with the most amazing guarantee in the diamond business. If you buy your diamond engagement ring from us at Perry's Emporium and it rains on your wedding day, your ring is absolutely free.
It's the Perry's Emporium Legendary Rainy Day Diamond Guarantee.
No other jeweler in Eastern North Carolina has a larger selection of loose diamonds, diamond engagement rings, and wedding bands than Perry's Emporium, all at the guaranteed lowest price. Perry's Emporium in beautiful Barkley Commons behind Henry's, and on the web at perrysemporium.com.
We'll see you when you get here.
All right, as we round out our broadcast here this morning, final half hour of the show upon us, and Yael Ossowski joins us every Friday morning inside this 9 o'clock hour with the Consumer Choice radio program, which airs on Saturdays here on the Big Talker FM at 10 a.m. Yael, back in North Carolina, of course, for a couple of weeks now. Have you enjoyed the Tar Heel State as much as you thought you were going to as you ascended upon the states with your mask on and your 2-year-old wearing the mask for the entire 8.5-hour flight? Are you enjoying your time here in America the way you thought you would be here 2 weeks in?
Yeah, definitely, Joe. I didn't think I'd be in the center of the zombie apocalypse and be seeing the craziness that's happening out at the gas stations. Particularly bad out here in Charlotte. But, yeah, it's been a great time. I mean, the sun's out. We've got plenty of good weather. Even was able to hit the mini golf course yesterday, something I would not be able to do back in Austria. So definitely a great time here, having a great, lovely time here in the Old North State.
Well, it's great to have you, and I know that, in fact, you'll be in our neck of the woods moving into this time next week. We really look forward to, getting back in touch face-to-face, getting the kids together, and it should be a grand old time, and show you the ins and outs of the port city. Hopefully, the weather will cooperate. I mean, it hasn't rained in, like 8 months, so I'm thinking, storms all next week as you come to the coast.
Oh, well, that's not good. The whole point is to go to the beach and to try to do the program from out to the beach. But what do I know?
No, and we hope that the weather gods and Mother Nature cooperates the way it has for the better part of this spring. We've enjoyed a great spring as far as the temperatures and the weather goes. And we hope that carries over into the hurricane season. Really, stay away from these storms. But as we move through this week, as you mentioned, the zombie apocalypse. Well, Governor Cooper today will hold a news conference at 1:30. To give an update on his executive orders. Of course, this comes one day after the CDC issues new guidelines saying that fully vaccinated people do not need to wear masks outdoors or indoors in most areas. Freedom is near. We've been tasting it for a while, Yael, based on the states that I have traveled to. And I hate to be one that steps and bumps my head with authority and call me irresponsible if you want to. I haven't really been listening to these guidelines and these executive orders for months. And I guess folks have their own opinion on that. But I've been assessing risk as I see it. I've been obliging the businesses that want me to mask up, but for the most part, it's gone on deaf ears for the better part of the last 3-4 months since I really started to travel to the more freedom-loving states like Florida, Texas, the state of Georgia, down here in Alabama. What do you make out of all this this past week with the new CDC guidelines?
Well, you're definitely not wrong. I think most people have kind of followed their own rules, and CDC guidelines are just that. They're guidelines. And what has been so problematic of all of this is that they're so late with many of this stuff. And there's an interesting paper that came out at MIT recently. I think this would be a good nugget there for your listeners, Joe. They had a couple of researchers who infiltrated a so-called skeptic COVID community, and they looked at, anti-maskers and the like. And they actually found that people who are in these communities and share information online are actually very, very scientifically literate. They think in very, we'll say, structured ways. They actually read studies. They cite evidence. They use graphs. And it surprised the ivory tower researchers over there at MIT because they actually said that people who say, follow the science, actually have something of a religious dogma that they're following, whereas the people who are more skeptical of many of the measures that we've seen are actually following scientific reasoning, because science is not just an institution, it's a process. And it's really fascinating to see that the CDC is just totally lacking. And, you can go back years. I've written articles about the FDA and CDC and just how terrible they've been on all kinds of health issues, because they're a political organization. We might think that they're a prime health agency, but they're a political actor more than anything else. And they're not very good at communicating scientific principles, but somehow the skeptics have been. It's really fascinating to see. There's been great writers who've covered, the differences in the lockdown states, where things work and don't work. You have places like Michigan that have been locked down the entire time but have had various case spikes. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening in the background. Whoa, yeah, boy. Turn it up. All this kind of stuff really makes us wonder, what is the role of science now? And if this people at the CDC are now coming out and telling us something that we knew months ago, yeah, that doesn't really breed much confidence. And I think that's the more problematic aspect of all of this, is that they assume that we're all just waiting on bended ear for what politicians would say. Most people have made up their own mind. They've actually done their own research and reading. I mean, when people were locked in, a lot of people did a lot of research, and they're able to decipher for themselves. That's the greatest part about, being an individual and being free. We live in a society where we can make our own decisions. That's what being a, consumer choice activist is all about, and it goes with science as well. So really too late for the CDC. They should have told us this from the very beginning. What they're doing is really just trying to play around with incentives. It's another version of the noble lie, telling us not to wear masks, telling us this and that. There's so much out there that really is trying to just manipulate us and motivate us when they should just give us the truth, give us the facts. I mean, I've been reading about this stuff in the studies in Israel for months, but all of a sudden Joe Biden says it's okay. I think that's problematic, and let's just treat Americans like they're a bit smarter than they have so far treated us, if you know what I mean. I'd say the other thing, Joe, that I've noticed, looking at particularly the stuff that's happening in Capitol Hill, I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of the conversations between Dr. Fauci and Senator Rand Paul, this is a broader topic. It's that of the lab leak hypothesis and questions about how the National Institutes of Health may have actually funded some research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, your favorite institute. And there's a very good back and forth that took place there in one of the Senate committees. And we learned a lot about manipulation of statements, about what true science is. There's all kinds of debate about whether or not this did come from a lab, whether it was found in nature. And the World Health Organization has not really conducted any good study of this. They've been very bad at trying to get access because the Chinese Communist Party have cut them off. Absolutely no surprise. So it's this kind of stuff that I think really keeps the skepticism very high amongst American people. People are actually pretty intelligent. They're able to follow this stuff. If we treat them as adults instead of little kids, I think we could go very far.
Yeah, we're having a little issue here.
Hey, no worries. I'm good to go. The other thing with this, with the Fauci, is the entire conversation hinged on what they called the gain of function research. And this is where Fauci he did a faux pas. You can see with the funding of this, Dr. Fauci said in the committee and reiterated, and many of you, if you're on social media, Facebook or Twitter, you've seen the memes that have come out from this. He says that his institute, National Institute of Health, did not fund gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. That's a kind of wordplay because the NIH did fund research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology specifically related to coronavirus and bats. And the reason that he uses the gain of function sort of tagline, and that's a bit confusing for people, but all it means is that you take a virus that's not dangerous and you soup it up so that it does become dangerous and infectious. And that's what they were doing, and that's what the NIH was funding. They had a subcontractor doing that. So it's a bit of a strange turnaround and rhetorical tools there used by Dr. Fauci. It's kind of unfortunate. This is the kind of stuff that really makes people skeptical of what our public officials and politicians and chief scientists say. So whether it's TK or Joe, I hope you agree with me a bit.
Yeah. Okay. And, thank you for carrying the conversation for a minute so we can get some of this technical stuff sorted out. And you're referring, of course, to the back and forth exchange that Senator Rand Paul had with Dr. Fauci here earlier this week. And, it's amazing. It's one of those things where, even at the highest levels and even, in some cases, the lowest levels of our government and the bureaucracy that runs our country, they are so hesitant and unwilling to, step out and admit mistakes or, push us into a direction where, you say, hey, you know what, maybe we got it wrong. And let's, shore this up so we can, make sure the next time around that we're better prepared and equipped to handle the situation, to provide accountability and transparency and openness to the American people. When we talk about, how many millions of lives have been impacted by this, global issue for the past 14, 15 months, just maybe a little willingness to admit, wrongdoing or overlooking something could go a long way with the way in which, you, me, and the general public, see a certain situation and how it plays out.
Yeah, and many months ago, if you had mentioned the lab leak hypothesis, the idea that the COVID virus originated in the lab and then somehow escaped. That was seen as kooky many months ago, but there are actually more mainstream reports now featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. You are seeing additional research that's come out from Nicholas Wade, who's a former science reporter at the New York Times. He had a great post over on Medium. I know we talk about that on Consumer Choice Radio, but it's this kind of thing to where, just because there's this kind of situation doesn't mean that everyone's going to interpret it badly. Give us the facts, give us the truth. No one is alleging that anyone did this on purpose, but if it did leak out of the lab accidentally or otherwise, that's a big deal. That means that the entire year of everything that we've dealt with can be pinned on the Chinese Communist Party, on all of their scientific practices. We don't need to go far to look at different examples where they've led the world astray. And this has been terrible for all of us. It's been terrible for all of our mental health, our physical health, our families, people we know who might have passed. I mean, that is a big deal, and I think it's unfortunate that we're not able to discuss it more openly, and we have to, kind of bow down to whatever science is when we know that science is a process, it's a sector of reasoning, it's not an institution, it's not just a person that you trust, it's a process, it's a way of learning, and what I have loved to see in the last year is that we have normal, ordinary Americans, who might work turning wrenches during the day, but at night they research this stuff, they read it, and in a way we can all become mini scientists. So I kind of like that revolution.
Well, and with that said, I mean, just the ability to access information and so many different viewpoints rather than what, many years ago you were given what you were told through, the traditional papers or, the nightly newscast, and that was about it. Maybe a radio update here or there. The ability for Americans to siphon through so many, different pieces of material research from, all walks of life, from all sorts of experts. I think ultimately, when you're given the information, it allows you to assess a situation in a much better way and then act accordingly. And I think, we've highlighted this for the better part of the past year. And, it's good to see that we're moving the needle forward. One last interesting point that was made during this exchange this week that we're highlighting between, two New York Fauci and, Senator Paul was the fact that he mentioned North Carolina as being one of those places where scientists are working with viral diseases and manipulating, in some cases, these diseases, to go along with what we're seeing in China, for instance. A lot of this scientific research is being done right here in North Carolina, and you'd think we'd want to be privy to this sort of information.
Yeah, we want to know what's happening up there in Chapel Hill. It's not just basketball games and football stadiums. There's actually a lot of research that is pretty risky, and it is true that it is risky. And in most circumstances in the United States, we've been pretty good at making sure that we have all the procedures to make sure all that stuff is locked in and doesn't leak out. But could it be that in Wuhan, China, that did not happen and it unleashed this plague on the world? We don't know. The World Health Organization reports have given us absolutely nothing. The leaders in that organization are covering up for the CCP. Thankfully, there are a lot of people who are petitioning and trying to get that open. But, yeah, to know that in North Carolina, right, in our beautiful state, there's this kind of connection to the origin of the coronavirus is, yeah, it's somewhat fascinating. There's always something interesting where North Carolina is injected in the conversation. That's why no matter where I go in the world, people still know all about North Carolina. They know all about this place. And hopefully it's only for good reasons, though. It's, our great breweries and our beach and our mountains, not necessarily our coronavirus research in our laboratories.
I mean, and really, you look at North Carolina as a whole, obviously a booming state, mountains to the coast, everywhere in between. But Charlotte, of course, banking hub. You've got the Triangle, which research, scientific research, technology when it comes to, the tech industry. Apple expanding here. You've got the military installations, on the eastern side of I-95 in Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune. I mean, you've got everything all packed into one, basically, that spreads across the United States. within one state here in North Carolina, it makes it for a very interesting conversation when you add all these entities and, when you really think about this type of thing from a grand scale, just, how much we influence the rest of the country and around the world as just one state of the union.
Yeah, and I think, your favorite company, Amazon, setting up shop outside of Raleigh, with its own large warehouse and office.
Yeah.
That's great to see. And I know that many years ago, I had friends who were talking about North and South Carolina as kind of a prime tech hub. I think for the moment you have Texas that's kind of taken that, or maybe Miami. But I think North Carolina still has its time to shine. As bad as our housing prices are lately, and I know they've gone up, and I know that the Len with Ben show, they've covered that, and some of the other guests you've had on the program all week, Joe. It is true. Just in the last 3 years, looking into houses across at least the Charlotte area, price is going crazy. But there's a lot of people moving in. There's a lot of these, northern license plates, the snowbirds moving in. And I really don't blame them. I did very much the same thing 20 years ago. So I'm not one to talk, but it's great to see in our state. And that's why I can't wait to get out to the beach, get out to Wilmington, see the beautiful downtown, see the beautiful beaches as well. It's just a great part of our state I'm able to enjoy. And it's just a couple of hours away, and hopefully there won't be as many people out on the road because they don't have gas, so I can just truck it there to Wilmington and get there in 2 hours flat.
Well, let me ask you about that because, you, along with, folks that have just, you don't need a lot. You don't need to be versed a ton in, economics and the ways in which, our economy runs, and how consumers consume. But literally a 101, I think, economics class would, basically give you enough knowledge and, fuel to oppose some of the things that we've seen gone on over the past week in regards to this, mess of a situation with the gas supply. Transportation issue, not a gas shortage, which led to all of this. The state declares an emergency along with others. You put in the anti-price gouging laws, and next thing you know, all hell has broken loose. And why do you defend, the ability for private companies to spike their prices in these sorts of situations? Why is that actually a good thing for the consumer as compared to what we saw play out over the past week?
This has been with every single disaster. We've kind of seen these scenarios, and if you're a governor, if you're someone like Roy Cooper, your primary messaging on this should be to calm the people down, to promote rationality, but to just say, hey, price gouging is illegal. And I know that Senator Tom Tillis, he's actually introduced anti-price gouging legislation up there in D.C., so we know how he feels about that. The entire point about price gouging, which is, again, a terrible term and evokes all kinds of negative emotions, is that it's just about adequate price for the supply. And when we're in a situation where we have price controls, we should always be skeptical. If we know that there's not that much gas, then that means that the price has to go up. That means that it is a scarce commodity and the prices should be allowed to float. If we keep them artificially low, all that does is it encourages hoarding. It encourages those people with big containers or plastic bags, or I've seen people with huge Rubbermaid containers, which is absolutely the most ridiculous thing. You're encouraging that behavior by saying, hey, the price cannot go above the rate that it was 2 weeks ago at whatever, $2.75 or whatever it might be. That just means you're giving an incentive to everybody to go out, even if they have 3/4 of a tank, they don't even need the gas, they're going to go out and they're going to get more. This is the kind of stuff that is just really backwards, and this is how you create shortages. This is how you create Venezuela. This is how you have empty store shelves. I didn't think we needed to learn this lesson again after the toilet paper debacle of last year, but it seems we do. And, this is not always the prettiest point to make, but you can't repeal economics in an emergency, no matter what. And I think that's something that I hope our governor gets the lesson from a lot of people. Perhaps he's listening in on this program and he can learn a bit. But that's not really where we got to focus. Let's focus on ways that we can get the people out there, that we can repair this stuff, and make sure that we have adequate pricing, because prices are just signals. And if those are distorted, it just gives everybody an incentive for bad behavior.
Well, like you said, kind of the negative connotation of the phrase that is used when we talk about price gouging. It means it seems as if you've got predators out there, the evil private entities and companies that are rising the price on a scarce commodity, as you mentioned. When in reality, as you said, what it does is actually prevent a lot of the things that we've seen play out. Yet all lawmakers from both sides of the political aisle continue to move forward with this, archaic way of thinking, despite what many people like yourself, tell us when we get into these situations. If it was, say, $7 a gallon of gasoline, Joe Bob out there with his plastic container at 10 gallons wouldn't be sitting at the gas station filling it up. I mean, it really just makes a lot of sense. Yet, I guess sense, and when we talk about common sense, doesn't necessarily play out when we talk about our elected officials at some of the highest levels.
Yeah, I mean, it's this kind of stuff that really gets us scratching our heads, and then we realize that politicians are no more experts than we are, and they have to try to account for the madness of the crowds, but giving people bad incentives, yeah, they're going to do bad stuff. Maybe instead of saying that we need to be masked up and all of this, if we just had a lottery like Ohio, if we just offered vaccinations at breweries more and more like we're seeing across the state, vaccinations would not be a problem at all. North Carolina is doing pretty much okay, but we have to think about incentives. We have to think about what we can do for policy to get people to do the right thing. This is nudging. It's not a new concept. People have won Nobel Prizes on this stuff because it is really fundamental to how our economy works and how consumer choices work. But yeah, not always the best decisions being made out of Raleigh. Not at all a surprise to many of your listeners who've been tuned into your show the last couple of years.
Yael Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center with us here this morning. Yael, that brings us to another topic that has been hitting the world this week surrounding a well-known entrepreneur in our country by the name of Elon Musk. And I know you're a cryptocurrency fan. I don't know much about it, frankly, so I'm going to give you the red carpet here to take us through this whole situation where stocks tumbled this week as it relates to the crypto Bitcoin and the viewpoint that Elon Musk has on this whole new way of investing financially. Kind of give us the backdrop. Give me the 101 because I'm not very well versed on this whole situation.
Well, we've had for the better part of probably a year or 2 years Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, CEO of SpaceX, of Starlink, a number of companies. He's made himself into a crypto fanboy, talking about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Dogecoin and the rest. And even, I think the more important part for your listeners, actually in Tesla, they bought Bitcoin as a reserve in the company. So it's as if the big talker went out and bought Bitcoin and kept it on the balance sheets. And he did that months ago. It's caused the market to go up. The price of a Bitcoin, was hovering around $60,000. When I remember back in my day, Joe, it was about $200. But, you have this positive movement, people who are using decentralized currencies, going outside the traditional banking system. And then all of a sudden, Elon Musk says, you know what? I'm actually really concerned about the environment. All this Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining they do on those computers, it's actually increasing global gases and emissions. I'm actually really concerned. So we're not going to accept Bitcoin anymore. And that obviously caused the price to tumble 20%. The way that I see it is this is not new information. This is kind of the Elon Musk way of playing with many of the consumers and regulators and everything related to climate change and carbon credits. There's a lot to be learned there. Carbon credits are something that we're studying a lot more at Consumer Choice Center just because it's a crazy market, offsets and the like. There might be some of your listeners who are very attuned to this, but pretty unfortunate because I think cryptocurrencies are great. They're an amazing innovation that do allow people who don't have bank accounts or people to send money without very little cost. I think that's a great innovation in our age. But to see Elon Musk kind of playing this game, yeah, he looks more and more like a politician every day, which is kind of concerning for a guy who, at times is the richest man on the planet. But just for your listeners to know, a lot of the chicanery when it comes to climate change and carbon taxes, that's going to be a big focus. So we've definitely got our eye on that for the moment.
Yael Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center joins us every Friday morning to round out our program. He, along with David Clement, host the Consumer Choice Radio Show, and it airs on our station at 106.7 FM, The Big Talker, on Saturdays at 10 a.m. And heck, Yael, next week you'll be with me in studio, hopefully, for your trip to the coast, and we look forward to that. I can't wait.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Until then.
That's our friend Yael Ossowski, once again with the Consumer Choice Center, the global grassroots movement for consumer choice. You can find out more about the issues that they follow and write about on a daily basis on their website at consumerchoicecenter.org, the global grassroots movement for consumer choice. All right, we're moving up into the top of the hour, rounding out the week, of course, when we get back on Monday. Our friend Chad Adams will jump in the saddle and take over our 3-hour program as we make our way back from the Gulf Coast, heading down the stretch of the college baseball season. We've got 7 games to go before we head into the conference tournament, which will take place in Montgomery, Alabama, towards the end of the month, leading into Memorial Day weekend. That'll do it for me as we wrap up the program here on this Freedom Friday, May 14th, the year 2021. You've got all the information you need to know for the day. Get out and enjoy your life and this beautiful weekend on tap across southeastern North Carolina. I'll talk to you on Tuesday right here on the Big Talker FM.
Keeping Southport informed. The Big Talker, 106.7 FM, WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Breaking news this hour from